glad that you're here. Now, first of all, be sure to have some breakfast, refill your plate, sit down, and we're getting ready to go ahead and start this off. I want to welcome everyone to this event, those who are in here in person, those who are out there virtually, and those who are on their way here but haven't arrived yet. But I've gotten a couple of calls that told me that they're coming in. And I want to say this. We're here because kidney disease affects so many of us. And I know that many of you may be aware or may not be aware. But we're here today really to talk about that. Again, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Richard Knight, and I'm pleased and proud to serve as the Vice President and co-founder of the APOL1 Action Alliance. I got a cue card right there telling me its name. And of course, this is our first major event, the Empowerment Summit. And sitting on the front right there is Sharon Rouse, who is the president and co-founder and driving force. And more to come. We'll hear much more from her later as we get into the day. But I want us to take a moment for those who are living with kidney disease. Many of us know the numbers. 37 million Americans have kidney disease. That's 1 in 7 adults. But most don't know it. Only 10% do. Now, APOL1 mediated kidney disease is a small percentage of that. But when we get deeper into the numbers, we know that African Americans are 13% of the population, 32% of the patients on dialysis. So that gives us pause to take a deeper look. And that's what we're here to do. So many of you who are living with kidney disease, carrying that burden, and you may have someone in your family carrying that burden. But the good news is that we're at a point now where we can diagnose the disease. If it's good old-fashioned kidney disease like me, I lost my kidneys due to hypertension, or if it's one of the other kidney diseases. In this case here, we're talking about APOL1. But if we can, I just want to take a moment because I'm certain that many of you, like myself, have lost family and friends to kidney disease. So I really just want to take a moment and bow our heads and just remember to have a moment of silence. Thank you for that. And now we're going to introduce you to APOL1 in another way. This is a very structured approach, and those who are much smarter than me arranged it. So right now we're going to take a look at what is APOL1, and we're going to hear it from the voices of patients.
So thinking back over, I would say 15 was probably the first time that I realized that something was going on. Didn't equate it to kidney disease at all. But I remember being told I was spilling protein in my urine, and so I'd hear the doctor tell my parents, little protein there, but that's normal sometimes on your lab work, and so she's okay. We were on vacation one summer in Williamsburg, Virginia. I woke up in extreme pain, abdominal pain, and I was rolled over on the bed, and it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and so it wouldn't go away. He was like, okay, maybe if you try this, or let's take this, and so still the pain persisted. So he said, okay, let's go to the hospital. It was excruciating pain, and I thought at one moment I was dying, but when we got there, they said, we think it's a kidney stone. But we don't see anything right now in her CT scan or anything. We don't see the stone, but it must have been a kidney stone. So I followed up with a urologist. I did the infusion where they put the dye through to see if there was a stone there. They never found anything, but I never had that pain again. And so little things like that happen. I would get strep throat quite often when I was younger. So thinking back now, I'm like, those were probably signs of kidney disease then that no one picked up on. I wish I'd known that protein spilling in your urine was far from normal, that it was abnormal, and that was a sure sign, or at least a pretty good sign that something's going on with the filters in your kidney.
My wish for the medical sphere, I would say, is just have more of an understanding of ancestral lineage, because I feel like in our situation, in our journey, that was the one thing that was missed. And we had that one little birdie of a voice who kept trying to bring that to the forefront. But because it wasn't a norm in those cultures, they just didn't think about it. I would just love that all medical professionals come to the table from a culturally responsive lens. Don't think just what you think, was taught on the surface in medical school. Listen as much as you educate. You all are phenomenal. You all have went to school for thousands of years, in my opinion, to know all of what you know. But don't discredit parents and children or patients with the knowledge of experience that they too bring to the table.
When I look back over the years where I was back in 2004 when I initially started dialysis, and on up to 2006 when I got my transplant, what brings me hope now is that we have answers. Back then, we just tried to do the best that we could. We didn't have a lot of answers. We didn't have the hope that the science brings us now. And with us, that's the beauty about what we're doing. We're set up to collaborate with. We work with the American Kidney Fund, who pretty much started this focus on the APOL1 gene. We work with the organization that I used to be president of, and still on their board, the American Association of Kidney Patients. A lot of talent, a lot of skills there. We work with Sharon's organization, in addition to this one, Kindness for Kidneys, because she does support groups so we can let them be aware of it. So all of these things we're looking at, not operating in silos, because for the longest time, healthcare has operated in silos. We're doing this in a much more targeted, strategic fashion. I'm telling you, that was powerful. every time I see that, it just reminds me of how this is impacting. And did you notice the young people? And that's what a lot of this is about. I have a lot of my older friends here because I want them to tell their kids and their grandkids. But now, I want to take a moment because we couldn't just come out and do this. We had help. So I want to certainly recognize our sponsors because without them, this simply would not be possible. First of all, this Kindness for Kidneys. They serve as our host and fiscal sponsor to allow us to get going immediately. Then we have Vertex, our empowerment partner. Vertex is doing a lot of work in this area. We love it, and we certainly appreciate their support. Next, we have Travere Therapeutics. They're an empowerment ambassador. And finally, we have Maze, very solid organization, and they're here with us today, so I want you to take a chance to step over and talk with them, get some more information during the break. And I mean, quite frankly, this just touches my heart, which is why we do it. And I'm just so excited to have the support from all of you being here. And again, our goal is education for you to go forward. So I was talking about collaboration. What I want to do now is bring up to the stage to give us some insights and give us some words the Honorable Council Member Sidney Harrison. And he represents Prince George's County at large. We have 9 districts here, and he covers them all. And Prince George's County has roughly 870 million, very high percentage African American. So probability, this is very important for the county here. I know he's championed health equity initiatives, community-driven solutions to health disparity. So let's welcome Mr. Harris, and we look forward to hearing your words, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. First and foremost, let me thank the APOL1 Action Alliance for hosting this event today, giving us the opportunity to come together as a community to learn, to educate, to engage, and empower each other, and to really speak about something that is affecting our community, which is chronic kidney disease. And I want to thank Ms. Sharon Rouse for her advocacy right here in Prince George's County. Yes, that deserves a round of applause. I had the opportunity to meet Mrs. Sharon Rouse back at Riverdale Baptist in 1988. And just 2 young kids in the 8th grade didn't realize how life still brings you back together to make a difference. Sharon's testimony is a direct inspiration to us all, but in Prince George's County in general. We are a community of 88.89% persons of color in Prince George's County. We are one of the most vibrant communities in the United States of America, where our diversity is our strength, but yet we have our own healthcare challenges amongst us. When we look at kind of the geographical location of the county, and we look at our outpatient care services, and we look at the need for expansion in those areas, one of them is making sure that we have the proper care for individuals who are experiencing kidney disease. Over 35 million people in the United States of America are experiencing some sort of chronic kidney disease, and 1 out of every 3 Americans are at risk. That is a startling statistics because 87 to 90% of those people don't even understand they are at risk. We just saw some numbers that came across the screen that says that despite all this, 13% of the African-American population right here in the United States of America experiencing kidney disease. We make up about 35% of the patients that are going to dialysis. And so this is a clear indication that people like Mrs. Rouse who are stepping up to do something about this, to eradicate these type of challenges that we face with our families. I went through the process of trying to give my kidney to my brother. Went through the Johns Hopkins, what I call a stringent process, the rigors of Johns Hopkins. And out of 100 patients or 100 applicants that tried to give their kidneys, only about 5 of them actually make it to give a kidney. It is a very, very tight process. I realized that my kidney function was around 88%. And that had to do with stress or some of my diet, some of my consumption, things of that nature, just that I'm doing that I don't even realize what I'm doing. And it really made me educate myself. My brother had 15% kidney function, but he was able to get a kidney, which I'm very grateful for someone who made that sacrifice to give him a kidney. And he is alive today and he's doing well. And so, yes. So the work that you do does matter. It does impact our community. And I just want to say this. We in Prince George's County are about 960 to 70,000 people. If we were considered a city, we'd be the 15th largest city in the United States of America. Our square mileage is about 499 square miles. And yet, there's about 100 to 140,000 people, residents, living with kidney disease right here in our county alone. But what's even more alarming are the individuals that don't know that they're living with kidney disease. And so we as a legislative branch, the executive branch, the judicial branch, working with our state and federal partners to expand the access and quality of care in Prince George's County is so important. So the work that you do to help us get and maintain that access, to make sure that we have equity in our community, because we have loved ones that we care about, our family members, our neighbors, our community members that we want to see, but they are dealing with some challenges because of the healthcare infrastructure in our community. And so you are the trailblazers and the innovators that strengthen our healthcare system. And so that requires updating zoning that allows the expansion of outpatient care services. And so these are things that I'm focusing on. And I just wanted to leave you with this, because I heard one of the testimonies on the screen, and that person, she was correct. Some of the things that we do as human beings are adding to how our families are experiencing chronic kidney disease. Right now alone in Prince George's County, when you think about cholesterol, high cholesterol, diabetes, high blood pressure, things of that nature, One of the things that we need to eradicate and create more healthy standards in our community is that Prince George's County leads the state of Maryland in fast food saturation. Out of 3,141 counties in the United States of America, Prince George's County ranks in the top 23. So when you look at healthcare outcomes and healthcare disparities, when we're a product of our environment, we're adding to the burden that's already been placed on us. And so we have to do more, and we have to be very mindful to really understand and educate and engage and empower one another about how all these sectors come together to move our community forward. And it starts from organizations like this today. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. We really appreciate that. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to working with you. And for us, that's what this is about, being able to reach out to individuals, and I'm excited that he is aware of. I think that's one of the key things right there. So, having said that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who's going to come to us remotely. But give me a second, let me tell you a little bit about her. Dr. Janice Lee. She's going to talk about APOL1 101, Understanding the Genetics. Dr. Lee is a board-certified nephrologist and a member of the APOL1 Action Alliance Board. We're really pleased about that. So she brings clinical expertise as well as personal commitment. In her practice, she works directly with patients living with APOL1 and, of course, on dialysis. So she's witnessed this firsthand, the life-changing impact. And beyond being a practicing clinician or nephrologist, she's a tremendous researcher, and this is one of her areas of interest. So I was real excited when I asked her if she would take a few minutes and explain this to us. And the thing I like about Dr. Lee is that she talks in non-medical language. So she really talks to us. And when I first met her, and she told me at the time, I was president of AAKP, she wanted to be on our board, I said, yes, I can put you on our medical advisory board. She said, no, I want to be with the patients. And so that's what I like and respect about her. So we're going to play a video of Dr. Lee and listen up so we can get a first-hand knowledge as to what APOL1, as to what it is.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank the APOL1 Alliance Empowerment Summit Committee for inviting me to speak on APOL1 mediated kidney disease. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to basically explain what APOL1 kidney disease is. I'm going to also abbreviate that. It's called AMKD. We're going to talk about what it is, who is at risk, how to diagnose it, and what are the treatment options. APOL1 mediated kidney disease is an inherited genetic disorder that affects persons of African ancestry. This abnormal gene, defined as two risk variants of the APOL1 gene, is a gene that originated in West Africa as a protective adaptation against African sleeping sickness. Now that this gene has been passed on, it has been discovered to be toxic to membranes of the kidney and cause kidney damage, which is manifested by excess protein in the urine, and abnormal kidney function defined as estimated glomerular filtration rate, or EGFR. When an individual carries two copies, their risk for kidney failure is 3 to 5 times higher than the general population, and that they progress to end-stage kidney disease or needing dialysis 9 to 12 years earlier than patients who do not carry this high-risk gene. We have known for a long time that African Americans have a higher prevalence and severity of chronic kidney disease that has been attributed to high rates of hypertension, diabetes, lower access to healthcare services, poor socioeconomic status, and cultural or lifestyle factors like diet, which is coupled with food insecurities. But now we are learning that perhaps one of the most important factors to consider is genetics, and specifically related to the APOL1 gene. Now, who is at risk for AMKD? We know that around 13% of African Americans have the abnormal APOL1 genotype, defined by two high-risk variants. We know that 40% of the African American population carry one lower risk variant, so they're not as high risk as those who have two risk variants. Of those who have the two risk variants, 25%, or 1 in 4 of those individuals, will develop kidney disease. So again, if you have the APOL1 high-risk variant, it doesn't guarantee that you will have kidney disease. Again, it's a 1 in 4 chance. But we've learned through clinical observations, research studies, that with the second hit phenomenon, there are certain factors that trigger or accelerate the disease in those with the two risk variants. Things such as inflammation, viral infections such as HIV and COVID-19 have been known clear triggers for activation of AMKD. Also, uncontrolled hypertension is a risk factor. So persons of African ancestry, whether they're Black or African American, or if they're Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latino, or even individuals with South Asian or Middle Eastern ancestry from regions with historical African migration, can have the abnormal APOL1 genotype. If a patient has progressive chronic kidney disease, persistent protein in the urine, a family history of kidney disease, and or if they have African ancestry, they should be tested for the APOL1 gene. So what kind of test detects this? It's a very simple genetic test using a saliva swab from your cheek. There's no blood test needed to determine if you have this abnormal risk variant. Also, to determine if you have kidney disease, we would do a blood test for GFR. Again, that determines your percent kidney function. And then a simple urine test to detect if you have protein in the urine. The symptoms associated with APOL1 kidney disease vary. The most common symptom, especially early on, is no symptoms. It can be a silent disease, which is consistent with other forms of chronic kidney disease, especially early on. But the blood and urine tests would indicate that one has a kidney problem. Now, those with more advanced disease who may have high amounts of protein in their urine or abnormal kidney function, shown by low GFR, those individuals may have swelling in their legs and feet. They may have foaminess in their urine, and they may have high blood pressure. So, diagnosing AMKD also has important consequences related to the ability for African Americans to have successful kidney transplants. It is well known that there is a critical shortage of organs for African Americans in need of kidney transplant. But it is also known that there is a shorter kidney graft survival in kidneys transplanted from African American donors compared to non African American donors. And this has been shown to be directly related to the presence of the abnormal APOL1 risk variant in the African American donor kidney. Thus, family members of potential kidney recipients may not be ideal candidates for donation if they express the APOL1 risk variant. Thus, it is essential for those family members of persons with the abnormal genotype to be tested to determine if they are indeed a suitable donor, as well as for their own health implications. Fortunately, there is treatment for patients with AMKD. Generally, for many types of kidney disease that cause protein in the urine, there's a plethora of data showing benefit of different medications that affect blood pressure, mostly ACE inhibitors, angiotensin receptor blockers, and the new kid on the block are the SGL2 inhibitors. These have all shown promise in treating patients with kidney disease and protein in the urine. It's also important to have good blood pressure control and have a good lifestyle factors such as a low salt diet. However, there's exciting science that has advanced in this area, and that there are in development several chemical compounds in development and in clinical trials that inhibit the activity of the abnormal APOL1 gene. So persons diagnosed with AMKD can participate in clinical trials that offer therapy to directly target the abnormal gene and possibly slow progression of chronic kidney disease. In summary, it is so important that persons at risk of this disease and that clinicians taking care of these persons are aware of the need for genetic testing. Persons of African ancestry with a family history of kidney disease or protein in the urine or high blood pressure and known chronic kidney disease that is estimated by abnormal GFR should be tested for the APOL1 risk variants. And then they should be referred to a nephrologist who is a kidney specialist for their treatment options and offered access to ongoing clinical trials. Our goal in this session today is to spread the word about AMKD in as many ways as possible, foster interactions that raise awareness, and encourage more widespread testing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
hopefully that helped out. Very insightful. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing the president of the APOL1 Action Alliance, Sharon Rouse. And I just want to say that she's not just talking the talk, she's really walking the walk. Long-term transplant patient, and what happened to her in her earlier years in life, teenage years, is one of the reasons why we're here. And so she's had a vision. She, in addition to our organization here, she is also the founder of Kindness for Kidneys. When I first met her, she always told me she wanted to do more for the patients because she felt very blessed that she was able to get a transplant and recover and return to health. I'm going to let her share her story with you, but I just want to say I appreciate the opportunity to work with her as we go on this mission and we take this walk, and we want you to join us as well. Sharon Rouse.
Wow. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm just so grateful, so full right now. Just thank you for being here. Thank you for celebrating with us. Just grateful for the opportunity. As I walked into the room, I'm like, wow, this is much bigger than all of us here. And I don't think we realize that. So much bigger than us. And yes, we've committed to it, to doing this work, but what we see here today represents legacy. It represents generations that we're going to impact for years and years to come through this organization and many others. And so as you're sitting today, as you're going throughout this conference, I want you to reflect on what your legacy is going to be. What are you leaving for the generations that are coming behind us? We're all put on this earth for a reason. And one of my commitments to God is I don't want to leave this earth without doing what I was placed here to do. So as I stand here before you today, that's exactly why I am here, because this is what he's purposed for me to do. And whether I like it or not, this is what it is. And so just want to share a brief overview of my story. It's been quite a journey over the last 20 years. I thought back like, wow, 2006, I was walking into the emergency room and being told that my kidneys were failing. And then here we are 20 years later. It's been quite a journey, but one that has really strengthened me. It's strengthened my family. It's brought so many connections that I could have never imagined, many of you sitting here today, because of this journey. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of my journey. We would be here all day if I told the full story, but just give a brief overview of my journey and why the APOL1 Action Alliance. And so in 2006, as I mentioned, I ended up in the emergency room, and I had a 5-month-old, my daughter, who's I'm so blessed to have here today, 20 years old. And I was in the emergency room. I had just gotten back to work from being off on maternity leave all summer. And working in the school system, it gave me that luxury. And then there I was being told that my kidneys were failing. We didn't talk about kidney health in my family because we didn't have anyone that really had kidney disease or anything. So it was never anything that I knew, had background knowledge on or anything like that. And so fast forward, doctor comes in, she said, your kidneys are failing. You know, it could be lupus. I had a lupus diagnosis in 2003. And she said, maybe it's lupus. Maybe that's what's going on. You just had a baby, your body took a hit, and here we are. And so long story short, was diagnosed with focal segmental glomerular sclerosis. And I was like, what is that? You know, what is this? And rare kidney condition, they mentioned that causes scarring in your filters in your kidney. Had no idea how this happened to me. And so I found myself in a space where I was in denial. I always tell my kidney warrior friends it's very normal to experience the grieving process when you receive such horrible news like that, where you know your life is going to be different from that day forward. And so got the diagnosis, went through this period of wondering, what life would look like for me, what life would look like for my family. I'm like, God, this is definitely not a perfect time here, because I have a 5-month-old, I need to be a wife, I need to be a mother, what's happening here. And so I had two choices. I could fold and succumb to the feelings that I was having and the depression, off and on depression, that I would experience silently, or I could rise to the occasion. And so I was in the hospital. Was in denial, so I would not show up to get the dialysis catheter when they started having those conversations with me. And so I would be labeled the uncompliant patient during that time in the journey. But I ended up in the hospital, really low hemoglobin levels, and so my nephrologist said, look, this is do or die at this point. You've let this go on too long, and we need you to get on dialysis. And if you don't get on dialysis, when you leave this hospital, we're afraid that you're gonna die. And so I had a decision to make. And I really feel like that was the defining moment in this whole process for me, which is why I'm standing here today. And I came to a conclusion that, why not me? I could sit here and why is this happening? And I could stay in that space, or I could do something about it. And so that was the stance that I took. Why not me? Why not I sit in this dialysis chair on behalf of the people that may come behind me? Maybe I can grab some information so that if they're ever faced with this, I can be in a better position to educate them. And so when we talk about legacy, it really is stepping outside of us in our comfort zone to benefit the people that are coming behind us. And so that's how Kindness for Kidneys started. Long story short, I have my beautiful sister here who's my kidney donor in 2013. She stepped forward, she was relentless, and I'm just forever grateful for the gift that she's given to me. So Kindness for Kidneys was born out of a space of just seeing a need in our community. When I went into dialysis, I was kind of blindsided because I'm like, why didn't I know about this? Why aren't people, we see a dialysis center on every corner pretty much. Why aren't we having conversation? We're the people that are going to lead the charge so that this is not a part of our community story. And so that's where Kindness for Kidneys started. And we really just wanted to get the word out, to educate, to empower, and to be there for individuals who often feel alone going through this journey. There were times that our family, we didn't know what was happening. We were just trying to figure it out. And so we wanted Kindness for Kidneys to be that safe place for people, for families to land, to get the information that they need. Fast forward 2 years ago, sitting in a meeting, been to several American Kidney Fund meetings and AAKP meetings, started to hear about APOL1. And so I didn't connect the dots right away, but I started to wonder, because I've wondered for years how I ended up with FSGS. Didn't have high blood pressure, diabetes, none of the markers that we were told impact those who have kidney disease. And so I really just wanted to get some answers. For years I had lived not knowing why I had FSGS. And so I decided to do a genetic test. I said, maybe it's genetic, but I don't know anyone in my family. Even up through my great-great-grandparents, I never heard of anyone that had kidney disease, kidney failure, or anything like that. And so took the test, decided to just order 23andMe because I kind of wanted to know right away. So I ordered the test and did find out that I did have 2 copies of the G1 high-risk allele. Didn't know what it all meant, just saw it on the report. And so that's why we're here today. I didn't think that this was going to be the journey, but clearly it is for me. And I think that in this space, I think there's a real opportunity for us to come together to make a difference. I think we're all doing great work in the kidney community with APOL1 and things like that, but we're looking at this as an opportunity to be that bridge for families, to bridge to access to resources, early intervention, the bridge to collaboration. For too long in the kidney world, we kind of had, well, they're doing this, they're doing that. And I really feel like the APOL1 Action Alliance is going to be the organization that helps to bring people together around APOL1 and to really get the word out in the community. Just by show of hands, how many of you had heard of APOL1 prior to coming today? Not as many. Not as many. And so that just lets us know there's a huge need to get the word out there, especially in communities of color. I know for myself and some of the panelists that you'll hear from today, it kind of gave me a sense of relief. I was nervous at first because taking a genetic test, you don't know what else you're going to find out. So I was a little nervous there, but I knew for me it was about my legacy. It was about the fact that I have a child. And so I want her to be equipped and in a better position with the information if she does have the high-risk alleles and can get the early intervention that she needs. So that was the driving force for me. But we got to get the word out. There are a lot of people, I'm thinking of some of my dialysis warrior friends who are sitting in a chair in dialysis right now that have APOL1. They probably feel guilty. They probably feel a lot of shame around their diagnosis because you don't know, so you want to pinpoint it back to something. And being able to say, maybe it wasn't that I had that poor of a diet. Maybe this was something that, I was already predisposed to. And so that's what we want to do with the APOL1 Action Alliance, and that's why it matters in this moment. And who better to do that than patients and people that are impacted by APOL1. And so I just want to leave you again with how we started. What will be your legacy? What will you leave for your family members? Whether it's health, a lot of times when we think of legacy, we think of, I need to leave an inheritance, I need to leave money, I need to set them up for success that way. But if they're not healthy enough to enjoy it, and so we want to make sure that we're mindful of our legacy. And today, that's what this is all about. This is what the APOL1 Action Alliance is about, is leaving a legacy for the generations that are coming behind us, making sure families are empowered to walk this walk, to get the testing that they need, to get their questions answered, to give them a pathway forward. Many times people that may suspect that they are impacted by this, they don't have a starting point. It's like, well, what do I do? My doctor doesn't even know about this. And so we want to be the boots on the ground to give them those steps, that roadmap and what that looks like. And we're not going to do it alone. We need you. We need everyone sitting here to be a part of this. We need the community. We need our pharmaceutical companies that have drugs in development. We need our healthcare providers. We need the entire village. And so I just want to thank you again for being here. I hope that when you leave, you're empowered to go out and make a difference, but even more empowered to consider your legacy and what you're leaving for those that you're attached to. So thank you so much, and I look forward to sharing more later.
Thank you, Sharon. And again, that's why we're all here today. Right now, we're going to take a 10-minute break and come back, and we'll continue on, have an opportunity to hear from the patients and some of our experts. Thank you. See you back in 10 minutes.
So welcome back, everyone. We're going to get started with our patient panel. I am so excited to have these beautiful women here. We're supposed to have a gentleman too, but he's a little under the weather, and so we're definitely sending our well wishes to Quentin Turner G, and we just know that you are in our thoughts and prayers. So we're going to get started. I'm so excited. They're such powerful advocates, like just really making a difference in the community, women that I admire, one that I just met a couple of weeks ago, and just really excited for you to hear their stories and to glean from their journeys so far. And so I have Tracy Chavez, Imani McConnell-Brent, and Catrice Turner. And so we're gonna just go around and ask some questions, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end where our audience members can ask questions of the panel. So I wanna hear from each of you, just to kind of level set here to get just a overview of your journey. And so can you take us back to when you first learned about APOL1 mediated kidney disease? What did that journey to getting a definitive diagnosis look like for you? So we can start, let's start with Catrice.
Alrighty, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catrice Turner. I am an APOL1 variant carrier. However, my son Justin, who's in the room, my 15-year-old, was diagnosed last year with AMKD. I will say this was something that none of us had ever heard of prior to one random night in the hospital. We took him to his physician just for a checkup to see if he had strep. It had been going around his school, his 8th grade class. We get there, the doctor looked at him and said, "I'm calling the hospital, you guys should go right ahead," thinking it was PSGN, if I'm not mistaken, which is something that can happen, an acute kidney disease that could happen from strep throat, which is what they first tried to diagnose him with. Then it was minimal change disease, and this was probably mid-February. However, my cousins and I had bought a 23andMe health kit around Christmas time because they were on sale. I had submitted, my swab. We were sitting in the hospital that night, weighing with the option of whether to give him this 8-hour intravenous medication because he had been steroid resistant, to see if it would help. In 4 o'clock that morning, my 23andMe health results came back stating that I was a APOL1 variant carrier. I literally pressed the button, called the nurse in 4 o'clock in the morning and said, "Hey, I don't know what this is, I don't know what this means, but can you look into this for my son?" Seeing as though it had been 4 diagnoses at that point, none of which he was responding to the medication. So that was the first time that I had ever heard of it. And I will tell you, my husband and Justin could tell you, I sat up for the next 4 days researching in that hospital all that I could learn about the variant.
Thanks. Imani?
Well, my story started around 2020. I was 17 years old. It was my senior year of high school. We were all shut down for COVID. We were doing school online. While everybody else was excited, even though it wasn't the way we wanted, we were all excited that we were about to be done. I wasn't. I was tired. I just felt heavy, lethargic. And I ended up getting up that morning and collapsing. And I had been fighting my mom, like, "No, I don't need to go to the doctor, I'm fine, nobody wants to deal with that." And I went, and I had stomach pain as well. They tested me, and they just told me I had an FSGS at that point. Of course, it took a while to get an actual diagnosis because it was a lot of COVID patients in the hospital. So I had been on 3 medications after that, and I wanted it to be something that people knew a lot about. And even though it's crazy to say, I kind of wanted it to be lupus because people knew more about it at that time. And I ended up not responding to any medications, and my doctor just said, "Okay, let's do genetic testing." So I did it, and I found out that I had AMKD. And most people would be sad, but I was excited because I was tired of taking medications, and one medication was pulling my hair out, and I couldn't have that. And I did research for my last senior year project. I was in the science and tech program, and At the time, doctors were telling me that it was kind of my fault because I'm obese and I was doing a little bit too much on the food section of life. And I didn't want it to be my fault, so I was actually it brought clarity to find out that I had AMKD.
Tracy.
Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Chavis. I didn't really find out about the APOL1 diagnosis, if you will, until 2 years after my transplant in 2020. I was told that I had FSGS, and there were a couple of other situations where other labels came up that I wasn't privy to in terms of what that meant for me. And I had the genetics test done, and it did show that very clearly at the top of the test that I had this mutated gene. I knew nothing about the APOL1. Actually, it seemed like the genetics counselors that I could reach out to at the company that did the exam didn't know much either. I thought that I was going to have this very lengthy, well-explained reason and a very comprehensive view and explanation of my results, but that didn't. I walked away more confused, actually. They just could tell me that that's what I had and that both of my parents, the genes that they had mutated, and that's how I got this. It was kind of frustrating because it was after my transplant, but I still felt like I didn't have the answers that I wanted. I, too, am a researcher, so I'll dig myself a hole, go down a black hole, and find out too much and then come out exhausted and depressed about it. But I just didn't have very many clear answers. And then I started, digging and bugging my nephrologist on my transplant team, and she helped me some. And there's some research online, but I feel like now there's more information to bring more clarity to APOL1 and what that means and how it's obtained. It definitely did point me back to my past, because I knew in elementary school that I was spilling protein in my urine because I heard my pediatrician say that to my parents. But at that time, in the 70s, it wasn't something that was very well discussed, researched. I wasn't even sent to a specialist, but I know as a kid that I kept asking my parents. I just was never satisfied with what anybody had to say. And then with some kidney advocacy groups and support groups, I started to learn more about APOL1. And then I saw something on Instagram that Sharon had posted with Kindness for Kidneys, and it just made more sense. And then even now, today at the conference, with hearing the doctor from Emory talk even more, it just brought all of the pieces together so that I could have a comprehensive conversation with my family and with my children about APOL1.
Thank you. It just brings to light to me, we're going to have multiple touch points before people start making sense of all of this. Yeah. And so thank you. All of your stories bring that to light. In the beginning, you're kind of hearing information. It's like, oh, okay. But then after multiple times of hearing it different ways, it's starting to all make sense. The pieces are all coming together. Let's talk a little bit about the mental health side of all of this. I know, any diagnosis is traumatic, but how has this impacted you all mentally?
I'll say at the beginning, I was really confused. The first week of my senior year, I'm in the hospital for a week. They kept doing urinalysis after urinalysis. I don't know how much that was exhausting. And I went home thinking, well, I can't go to college? And that was heartbreaking. I wanted to go to Spelman, and they didn't give me a scholarship, but honey, I was gonna take them loans. And of course now, I know that wasn't the journey for me, but at that point, my mom just threw me into therapy. I didn't even know that I needed it. I was just sitting there. It was so much happening at one time, and I was okay, and then one day, boom, I couldn't get out the bed because I was so sad, and my life, it felt like it had been ruined. I didn't know what was gonna happen to me. I'm still in therapy. of course, we're some years removed from the initial diagnosis, but certain things like yesterday, I had a nephrology appointment. And that can bring up some emotions and some memories of like, okay, your kidneys are failing, but they're not. And the confusing aspect of everything, you still just need to check in with someone. So I would say everybody should keep a therapist for multiple reasons. But if you're dealing with something in your body, your mind is connected, of course. So, of course, get a therapist for that reason.
Absolutely. Catrice?
So for me, and this is still somewhat hard for me. So by trade, I'm an educator. I'm an educational policy advocate. My undergraduate degree was in forensic psychology. So everything in my life is about adequate planning. I have a lesson plan. I have a backwards plan. I have a SMARTY goal. So to now be sprung into this situation that, one, I could have never planned for, had no prior knowledge about, honestly and truly threw me into a whirlwind. And as parents, we see ourselves as like the project managers of your households and your family, right? And I love me a good spreadsheet with a project plan, okay? Yeah. So with that being said, feeling light years behind the 8 ball, if you will, put me in such a negative space. I can't even begin to lie to you all and say that I wasn't. However, it then led me into, oh my gosh, like I'm just kind of the outsider looking in. How does Justin feel? Justin was at the cusp of finalizing his 8th grade year. He's supposed to be starting high school, and high school is supposed to be like the most fun. Your freshman year is supposed to be like the most exciting time for you. However, he's hospital bound, going through this transition. So what does that look like for him? And if I'm being candid, if it wasn't for him and all of his jokes and his humor, and just finding the things that makes him happy and push him forward, it's because of him and the light and the joy that he has throughout it all, that I've been able to push through. I will also be overly transparent and say, I think because I've just been constantly moving, that I haven't honestly taken the time to process. I'm out here in the community advocating for everyone else to consider their mental health. And while I am a strong advocate for therapy, everybody should get into it. I am, but it's just still so much to learn and process that the second I process one thing, there's something else that you now have to consider and process. So running after what's next has been a challenge.
Absolutely.
Can I also just add, Tracy here said that she remembers spilling protein in elementary school. That was a big part of me resenting everything. I remember spilling protein when I was 7 years old. So at the moment when I couldn't go away to college, when I was getting all this scholarship money, but I couldn't accept it from different colleges, I said, well, I don't like nobody. I'm mad. And I just had this anger because if I had known then, of course what I know now, maybe things would have been different. And maybe the onset would have still been at that time, but I would have planned better. I would have been more realistic. I didn't know how to move in life if I didn't know that fact about my life. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
Wow, that's so powerful, so powerful. And, you know, it's so interesting. I'm just thinking of your story, Catrice, and you really go into survival mode. You know, as a patient, as a parent, you just go into survival mode, and you're just trying to make it from day to day, from diagnosis to diagnosis, from medication to medication, just trying to figure it all out. And you don't take that time to stop and say, wait, where am I and what's going on with me? Tracy, did you want to layer in anything about the mental aspect?
Please know that my tears are wisdom tears.
Yes. Yes.
Because that wonderful statement, like, if I knew now, you know, if I knew then what I know now, boy, oh boy. But then again, just like Sharon was saying, she feels like God chose her for this journey. I sort of feel like I did start with a lot of anger and rage, you know, but I don't think that with the knowledge that I have now, if I had it then, if I would have been able to handle it.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm at such a different place. And aside from wanting like therapy or to ask, I really resented the fact that if I decided to go to therapy, which I did do, at first I was like, I really don't feel like sitting in someone else's chair and starting from the beginning. Like I really wanted somebody that knew my situation to meet me where I was. I didn't want to bring somebody along. I didn't want to have to like create these cue cards for somebody that had this onslaught of patients. So anywho, I did get some help later, but along the way, I think that the big blessing is that my village is like hardcore. Yeah. My friends, my family, you know, the family that I created, the fact that God must have planted inside of me some seed that just made me some hardcore do or die fighter. Yes. Like I am a Leo, but aside from that, I think God knew. I think God knew, like, this girl right here is going to carry so much, but that comes with a cost too. So at the time of all of this, when things were happening, I knew things were not right, but I also knew to question authority. I was seeing a lot of specialists. I got second opinions. I got third opinions. I had an endocrinologist tell me that basically there's nothing else I can do for you. Now, I wasn't a diabetic. I didn't have high blood pressure. I did experience swelling, a lot of fatigue. I was a student athlete, just like my dad was, and he was like a community leader, so I was like that. You know, I just had this mindset of, we're gonna solve this, we're gonna fight, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, rah, rah, rah. And I think by having that personality and that get it done mentality, I think through the years while I was going through these things with the symptoms, the swelling, I gained a lot of weight, it was like all this unexplained stuff. I feel like I just wore myself out. So by the time the real diagnosis came, I did 1 year of dialysis and then had the transplant at 4% kidney function. I was flat out beat down. And so the therapy wasn't something I could do right away. Honest to goodness, the therapy came from my caregiver, my husband, my friends, and the wonderful team at GW that I had. But since then, I have, yes, gotten into therapy. And then that's how I met Sharon, was through online support and empowerment through Kindness for Kidneys and other things. So like I said, I go through my bouts of being angry and resentful. Like here I am about to be 57, and I'm like, I was 5 and 6 and 7 years old. I remember hearing what they said. How come they weren't listening to me? Yeah. And I'm just so glad that, you know, you have the foresight by being an educator and all that. You talk about lesson plan and plan B, C, D. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, that didn't work. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do this. I just really thank the fact that I have doctors now that listen to me, and I have other people that I can turn to that have had similar experiences, and then I just try to sift through everything to find the gold nuggets for myself, because this really hasn't been an easy journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just hearing you talk about that, I think we think it's going to be one thing that solves the problem, you know, but it's multiple things. It's being around family. It's going and doing your own research when you need to. It's a lot of things that
Right.
help us navigate through this. But I think the beauty in it is that we now can take our experiences to hopefully help people not start from where we started.
Right.
And we understand the importance of us being at the table. And I don't think in the beginning I understood the importance of me being on the healthcare team. I was like, oh, they're going to figure it out. They'll
Right.
tell me what to do, and I
No.
just do what they tell me. But we're an important part of it. We're living it every day. And so, I always encourage families, like, this is your life. And so you have to be on your medical care team. You have to be driving, the information, looking for information, getting second opinions if you need to. When we talk about precision medicine, I'm very excited about where our healthcare and companies that have drugs in development and things like that are going. When we talk about precision medicine and treating specific diseases, not just a one-size-fits-all approach. Do you feel your healthcare team truly understands the nature of APOL1? And have you had to become the expert in the room?
I will start on this one. I feel like Now, don't get me wrong, our team is absolutely phenomenal. And to go back to our diagnosis journey, I will say there was one young lady who was a part of rounds, who was a resident at the time. She was the only African American in the rounds who kept saying, maybe we should try genetic testing. Maybe we should try genetic testing. And the rest of the group were just like, no, this looks like minimal change. This looks like this. This looks like this. To find out that it was through genetic testing that we got to a formal diagnosis. Again, with me being a data nerd and researcher by heart, so many of the symptoms that Justin would experience, and even me going back and kind of tackling some of my personal health concerns, even though I'm a variant carrier, I'm like, does this play a factor into this? I've always been anemic. Would that explain why he's having some of these symptoms? Check his blood. Check this, you know? And also one symptom that Justin has and still does a lot is the nausea and the vomiting. To find out, I was just in a rabbit hole one night, and he had been vomiting. We had to go to ER, and I was just like, hey, there was this one study about chronic kidney disease that I found on the internet that talked about intussusception. Can you look at his intestines? And they were like, girl, what? I said, can you look? And to come to find out, his intestine was folding into each other due to the fluid retention. So I feel like a lot of times, and they were transparent with me that some of this was newer to a lot of his healthcare team members in regards to knowing all of the things and consequences and ramifications of AMKD, that they now allow me the space, because they like, one thing Catrice gonna do, she gonna look something up and she gonna bring it to us. Down to, I mean, we're at the point where we just have weekly check-ins. Like, hey, how's it going? Is there anything that you found this week, Catrice? Because they know I'm gonna come, they know I'm gonna bring it to them. But I'm highly appreciative of that, and that, you know, his lead nephrologist even called and asked one time. She was like, hey, I don't know if this is gonna sound kind of controversial. She's Korean. She was just like, do you want us to flip his team so that they're all persons of color, or, you know? Because one of the things that I said to them was that a lot of times people's perspective only goes as far as their experience.
Yeah.
So when you don't come from a specific lived experience, that may not be the top of your priority list, or that may not be the thing that you consider first, which I felt like was a lot of our situation. So we swapped some folks out, to be clear and candid. However, we've all worked intentionally to build a rapport. That's the nephrology team, the social workers, even down to the case managers with the insurance company, where we're all checking in and bringing our own lived experiences and research to the table to convene and plan from there.
That's so powerful. Wow, Catrice, I'm just excited. I know you're just on this journey, but there's so much that you bring to the conversation and with your story. I'm just excited about how much further we're going to go, and how you'll be able to help us in so many ways in the community. I want to switch. I know we're getting close on time, and we do want to leave it open for questions from our audience, but let's talk a little bit about genetic testing. It's a deeply personal decision to go and get genetically tested. As you heard me say, I was a little nervous because I didn't know what else I was gonna find out. I'm like, living with kidney disease is enough. Like, what if something else is on here, cancer or heart disease or just anything? And I didn't want to put that in my mind and have to figure that out too, or be vigilant about that. And so what factored into your decision to do the genetic testing, and what would you say to someone that's on the fence about finding out about their APOL1 status?
I would say, as I said before, I was excited. It's better to find out because it's just better to find out. Like, you just want to know. You want to know what's going on with you. I was just sitting there with scarred kidney filters. Why are my kidney filters scarred? Like, we don't know. Well, what am I supposed to do with that? And of course, like, I asked the doctor, okay, great, so how do we unscar them? And she didn't have a response. So I wanted to know. And at the time, they said, well, there's this genetic factor, but of course you don't have that. That's rare. And one thing about me is I'm rare. But no, like, I felt like, what are the chances? Like, I feel like I would have it. And when I found out, I was happy because I had done all this research, and of course, I was so young and I was hard on myself. I didn't want it to be my fault like they had said. So I feel like it's freeing. You know the truth, and you know maybe some things you can change about your life. You want to choose kidney healthy options. You want to add some herbs to your diet that'll help you. I just went to the doctor and I got great numbers, and I'm really grateful. They're the best they've ever been. And my doctor said, well, what else have you been doing? I've been doing some herbal stuff, some oil of oregano. Sometimes we have to go back to the basics and add some things to our diet to help ourselves. So yeah.
So good. Catrice or Tracy, did you want to weigh in on that at all?
I feel like genetic testing is important in the sense that, you know, whether you're healthy on paper or healthy looking, there's always, you know, you just have pieces. And I feel like the genetics test helps you put all those pieces together to have one final picture. I knew something was wrong. I knew something wasn't right. My father had kidney cancer when my sons were 4 years old back in 2004. No, before that, but he had a transplant in 2004, although we did not have the same thing per se, but he's no longer living. So I really could, when I started going through this and things just tanked, I didn't have him to be able to ask him questions or to connect dots. I asked my mom, I asked her to get in touch with his doctors. They gave me a CD of all of his results and different things, but that's like just looking at algebraic equations and calculus and just not having the foresight to put it all together. And I think that the genetics test help at least, you know, put a label on it so you can research that label to see how you can move forward in the best way possible. But at the same time, you know, it opens the door for other things. Like, so you might find out you're a carrier for something and you have children, and then they may be disposed, you know, have a higher disposition for something, and you want to be able to have that for them. When you talk about legacy, to me, that's a piece of that legacy puzzle where you can tell your children, well, I didn't have this, Dad didn't have this, but I had this test done, and here's a copy. Like, I have a copy of my genetics test attached to my will so that they will have it if something happens to me. I'm not playing games. Right? And that's another reason. The other thing is, I got my genetics test 2 years after my transplant because I kept saying to my surgeon, something just is not right. Because it took a long time for my kidney to get up moving. I just think it's an additional piece that you have for not just your immediate family tree, but your family legacy overall. You know, I didn't do the 23andMe, and I don't have the family tree, so to speak, where I know the village from West Africa where my ancestors originated from. I can go back to my grandmother's grandmother, but only on one side of my family, right? And then if you're married, you're taking on your spouse's, if you have children, then that includes your spouse's genetic history as well. So I really think it's an amazing thing as a tool for just putting things together. And now I'm a grandmother. I get to be a grandmother, so that's an additional piece that I feel is important as far as legacy is concerned. Like you said, what good is it if you're sick? I'm not leaving anything else, right? So
That's so good, and I don't think I've ever heard of anyone putting a copy of their genetic
that's
test
on my will.
results.
I'm not playing
That is-
games.
That's a takeaway for me for sure, and hopefully for some of us in the room here. So I do want to leave some time for questions. We have about 10 minutes left, and so we want to open it up in the audience for anyone. There are 2 microphones on the sides there. If anyone has any questions, and I know we do have someone that's going to ask some of the virtual questions that may come in. Anyone in the audience have any questions for our panel?
Good afternoon. Excuse me. I have never heard of this before. I came because I was supporting my soror, my good friend. But when you keep talking about genetic testing, when I had my son in 2003, there was a genetic test that was not done. And I had my son in 2007, and they did this genetic testing that they did on all babies, especially children of color. And it was G6PD, I think that's what it is. So I had to carry a card around to let people know, especially at school, that he couldn't use this, he couldn't use that, da-da-da. Why can't this be a part of that genetic testing?
So you definitely have asked the question for our next panel, but I'm sitting here looking at Dr. Moxie Bibbs in the front, who's a pediatric nephrologist. But that's a great question. And I've heard conversations about it being a part of early testing. I know with genetic tests, I feel like the pediatric world does a better job. But that's a great question that hopefully will be answered in our next session with our panelists, our experts, for sure.
I have a question for, you guys are doing a great job. Really appreciate it. Imani,
Yes, sir.
because I have two passions, students and patients. And you at that great university, Go Bulldogs, Bowie State,
BSU?
did, and part of what we're doing is to work with HBCUs. So how did you handle this? Did people know about it? Your instructors, was there any support? So just give us some thoughts on that, and you're also helping us out as well. Thank you.
I'm not gonna get emotional. I just graduated. It was not easy. I remember my life, going to school, I have to go get my blood work at 7 o'clock in the morning. I would have to go back home, get my life together. Then I would go all the way to Bowie. That's a 30-minute drive from where I live. And I remember one class, it was my African American Studies class, my favorite class. He said, "Why are you always late? Why was this assignment late? Because you never do that." I said I was tired. He said, "Is that an excuse?" And then I just had to immediately break down and say, this is what's happening in my life, and I know you don't have to care, but this is my life. And he said, "Well, thank you for sharing." And from that point on, I felt a relief. And that's why I encourage African-American students like me to go to HBCUs. And sure, other professors and other universities could understand, but I felt seen and I felt embraced. Okay, you have this going on and we understand, but next time you still have to email because they still have to hold you accountable. It wasn't easy. I had to live my life being transparent and I had to be vulnerable. And I found it easier that way. I still find it easier because if you act like you have it all together, nobody's gonna know. I had nothing together. And sometimes that 11:59 came and I just cried. And I had to ask for an extension. But here I am, I graduated summa cum laude from Bowie State University. And I don't want anybody else to hold themselves to this standard because at some sections in my life, it was unhealthy how hard I pushed myself. And I don't recommend it for everyone, but I did it because when little people ask me if they can do the thing, I want them to know that they can do it. So, thank you for asking.
And if I can quickly add to that, like Imani, my first interaction with you via Zoom, I was just like, this is one of the most bad, you know what, young ladies I have ever met, and just gave me some hope and inspiration as I think about my own child. Again, one of the things that I do is I live in the advocacy space to help write and push legislation. And because of stories like yours, is one of the main things that I'm advocating for now, to make sure that secondary and post-secondary students understand their rights in this predicament to go to those colleges and universities and say, before you leave your high school, I need a 504 plan. I need to walk in here with special education services. And I know a lot of times, people don't equate medical diagnoses to special education services, but you all have the right to walk into those colleges and universities and every single one of those professors to know as much as you want them to know or as little as you want them to know. But what they better know is that you have this sheet of accommodations that everybody is supposed to follow.
Yes.
So I want this entire room to know and help young persons or young adults who are matriculating through the school system to understand that those rights are available to them. And as caretakers, I'm even learning in my research to, push for you all in your predicaments that I too can get a 504 plan as a caretaker of someone with chronic medical disease.
And I
So
had
know that.
I went through disability support services, and not every professor there was as, I don't want to make it seem like it was peachy keen, because some of them came with a little bite, and I had to come with a little bark. Because you gonna grade this paper, right, Bulldog? But we're allowed as people with chronic diseases or just any physical disability or not physical disability, we're allowed to do great things. So yeah.
But very quickly, end-stage renal disease, which really this all falls under, is a disability. So it's also a series of emotions, especially if you're prideful, right? You're like, disability, what does that mean? So as being in education, I had to sit down and talk to my administrator about what I was going through, because there were some accommodations that I needed to get through my day teaching 7- and 8-year-olds. At the time, I was a second grade teacher, and I was in the portable, so I was in the back of the building. When I was on dialysis at home, I did PD dialysis for 1 year. Well, dialysis made me extremely sick and nauseous or bubble guts, whatever. And so any given time when I would disconnect, I did not know if I was going to be like in the bathroom for a longer period of time, or when I got to work, thank God my commute was 4.5 miles, but nonetheless, I had to come up with a 504 plan type of accommodation to put things and people in my building in place in case I was having issues. So if I knew I was going to be running late because I was throwing up or whatever, I had a paraeducator who was placed in my classroom to let my students in. And then I also had the same wonderful paraeducator for if toward the end of the day or any point of the day I was sick on my stomach and needed to go into the building to use the bathroom or whatever, she came running to my classroom. And I also had to train my students how to react or respond if I was sick or what would happen. We have fire drills and active shooter drills and all kinds of things. Well, then they had to have a Mrs. Chavis drill. So then we had to talk about that and what to expect. No, and it gave them some empowerment and some accountability. And students were assigned certain things if they saw Mrs. Chavis having an episode or whatever. And my students who needed a lot of extra love because of poor choices and things like that, they got themselves straightened in line if they saw that I needed something. So it takes everyone, whether you're a student in college, whether you're a mother, whether you're an employee. If they don't know, they won't understand.
And I would be remiss if I didn't say that my mama, that's a mama. She's not a mom. I call her mommy, but that is, she went up to that college and said, hey, I don't know what y'all thought y'all was doing, but you know y'all can get sued, right? So grade that girl papers and get her what she needs. So I appreciate my mom because, yeah, and my brothers, my family, everything. So I just wanted to shout them out.
It takes a village. It takes a village. So we have about 2 minutes left. We're going to take one question here and one question here.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Erica Poe. I am a part of JT's Cadence. That's my godson. And learning about this has been impactful for all of us, for his community, for him. And one thing that I want to know, you all have talked about how, sometimes you got to ask the right questions, or you got to ask different questions. I would like to know from your point of view in this perspective, what is a question that should be added to the facts or the frequently asked questions when folks are beginning to go through that's not normally there?
I will say, as it comes to AMKD specifically, one of the things that I wish I understood more going into just different levels in blood work and lab work. For instance, checking your protein levels in your urine, checking your creatinine. Like if you see creatinine looking a little funny and spiking, ask those questions. If you see your hemoglobin, your red blood cells looking a little funny, though I would say those are the things to go into, especially if you've had any symptoms or any previous episodes that may have been kidney related. Next time you go in for lab work, I would consider those things. Or if you are now in a space where you have heard someone in your family that may be a variant carrier or has AMKD, to explicitly go to your physician to say, moving forward, when we do lab work, can we isolate these things?
That's great. That's great. And sometimes we underestimate fatigue. You know, we're just like, oh, I've been running around. And then so fatigue is another one. If you know that you're feeling unusually tired, like, it's like we need to do a little bit more digging
And
here. This isn't my norm.
Please check your teenagers. Like, I just thought that I was a lazy teenager. No, if that baby can't get up off that couch,
Yeah.
it's the issue.
Yes.
No, that's real, because Justin just thought that, you know, his little bit of weight gain and the fatigue was just, oh, well, puberty, I'm 13 going on 14, this is what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
It was not what was supposed to happen.
Yes. Last question.
Okay, last question. I want to thank you, thank you, ladies, for sharing your stories. You know, the idea is that some of you have transplants, if I understand. So living with transplants, congratulations on your transplant. We honor our donors and donor families. So without our donors, none of this can happen. So I want to congratulate you on receiving your transplant. As a 3-time transplant recipient, I often worry when I go to the doctor to see what my blood work is, the creatinine, EGFR. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, what is your feelings about when you go to the doctor and you have that blood work? Is it similar to what I'm going through?
You're not alone.
Yeah.
I'm excited about going to get my labs done. I choose to go to my transplant center because they have become like family. So it's like a little mini reunion for me, but it's also motivating for me. I get dressed up. I take myself to my favorite little cafe afterwards. It's a little ritual that I have. I bring my journal and I write my feelings down. Everybody at the cafe knows me. We take selfies. Of course I get nervous because any slight variation in your blood lab usually means something, or it means nothing at all. It's just like you're human, and it goes up, it might go down. I tend to take my labs very personally, so if something's not right, I'm beating up on myself. If my GFR is higher, I am like, oh yeah, you know, I'm excited. But what you're feeling is not unusual, especially in that you are a 3-time transplant warrior. Congratulations.
Well, yeah.
You're
Well,
still
thank
here.
you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. I get worried. Yeah, you're human, and try not to beat up on yourself. You know good and well what the ranges are, and you know that if you're touching those ranges that something might be off. But you know, the fact that you get your blood work done regularly is another act of self-care. You're taking care of yourself, keep a positive attitude, eat well. I went into transplant at 4% kidney function. My GFR right now is 80.
Wow.
Yes, 80.
Awesome.
So I'm saying it goes up and down. It can go 60, it could be 70, 75. It's still something to celebrate. Don't beat up on yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
But
Thank
yeah, I get nervous, but I just celebrate it. It just gives me the motivation to always do better. I'm always trying to beat my time. You know what I mean? I'm trying to always beat my numbers.
Absolutely. Thank you for
That's
that.
awesome. Thank you so much. And I just want to thank our panelists today. I admire each one of you. And just thank you for your time and your expertise, and just continue to be great. Just really excited about your journeys and how you're impacting the community. Great.
Thank you.
Can you let the audio guy know I'm going to be using these 2 mics from Tracy, the first 2 seats, not the whole seat though.
Hello, hello. Y'all
Yeah,
can hear me?
we're on.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. I am Taylor Renee, This is my friend Veronica Essex. We are very excited to be here. Sharon, thank you for this opportunity to just bring creativity to this space. We don't take it lightly, so we hope that you all enjoy this piece.
Yes. And Sharon, I'm just blown away. I'm so proud of you. I just had to say that. Like, I'm just blown away. Blown away. They say what you don't know won't hurt you, but that's a lie. Ignorance has been hindering us for decades. Unaware of what our history holds, possibly inheriting much more than physical attributes and personality traits, they lied to us.
And in prime times, we're taught that life is about taking risks, but what you don't know can hurt you. Because what if you can't necessarily define your time? And what if life is gone after this sentence? Was it worth it? The thing that you didn't know being passed from one generation to the next in a form that you can't even sense?
It's genetics.
So maybe it makes sense to gain knowledge on what we're made of. Identifying units of heredity is nothing to be afraid of. It's what makes us us. It's what makes you, you.
And a lack of knowledge does not
carry the promise of being immune.
Because history doesn't just live in books. Sometimes it settles down into bloodlines. Sometimes it echoes throughout households. Sometimes it hides between what was said and what was never even spoken at all.
Because, again, what if life was gone after this sentence?
And what if knowing helps shape how we see ourselves? Then maybe knowing truly is the beginning of freedom. Understanding where we've been helps us understand why we are and prepares us for where we're going. So go get tested.
And what are the symptoms? Bubbly or foamy urine, swelling in the legs or the feet, high blood pressure, weakness, and fatigue. What do these symptoms mean? Not always necessarily kidney disease, but how can you fully be sure unless you've seen your own screen? So who's prone to carrying this APOL1 gene?
People like you and me, born of African descent. 2 variants are normally required in order to trigger the disease. So if you knew your status, how would you change the way you're growing your family? This is not just about us. This is not just about right now. This is not even about just today. This is about legacy. It's about what's hidden within our DNA. It's about what's flowing through our veins. It's about the ability to shape a generation, but it starts with getting the proper education, so go get tested.
And let the knowledge that you acquire provide a different source of life's medication. Power through application, because simply knowing that help exists doesn't really live until you take advantage of it. So don't leave here the way you came. There is no such thing as small action. Don't give lack of knowledge any more satisfaction. Defeat the parish with what you know, because there's power in knowing. And we need to be appreciative for spaces like this that provide that power.
Opportunity and the ability to know. This is not a test.
But
this is the beginning of a generation transformed.
Powerful information, folks. We're going to take a 10-minute break, but before we do that, we have a legacy wall over there, and we certainly appreciate you sharing your thoughts, your feelings, just leaving a note. I think that that's very important, very much part of what we're doing today. So we'll see you back here in 9 minutes and 40 seconds now. Okay? Thank you. Hello, everyone. We hope you're enjoying yourself. But for all you guys out there in the hallway, please come back in and join us. We're going to have some of the smartest people in the DC area here to chat. So we give you 25 more seconds, and then we'd like to go ahead and get started. Testing. Oh. Hello, everyone. We're going to move forward with the program. And now we're going to have a interactive session, and we're going to get some of your questions answered. So we have a panel here of experts and one humble moderator, Ms. Barbara Harrison, Dr. Marva Moxie Mims, and Michael Spigler. We're going to take some questions, and each of them will respond. And then at the end, hopefully we have time enough left to have a little bit of a question and answer period. Okay, let's get this started. We're going to start out with a medical question. Here we go. For a long time, kidney disease was treated with a bit of one-size-fits-all approach. Can you explain to our audience why identifying APOL1 genetic variances changes the game, and what precision medicine actually means for kidney patients? And we're going to start out with Dr. Moxley Mims.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd just like to say what a pleasure it is to be here. So with regard to the one-size-fits-all, I was speaking to someone earlier today, don't remember who, saying that for decades in nephrology, we always felt like the stepchildren to the cardiologists because they always seemed to have fancy new diagnostics, fancy new treatments, and we had very limited options. And I think that's why for so long it was a one-size-fits-all, because we didn't have a lot of options to offer people. You know, steroids was always a big go-to. So I think in terms of APOL1 and the perspective of precision medicine, and in fact a lot of genetic kidney diseases, knowing that is very helpful because it prevents patients from having to go through so many medications that we know don't work for genetic disease. And so you can save people time along that, that diagnostic journey, or for some people it's a true odyssey to try and find out what they may have. So I think APOL1 changes the game, as one of the patient panelists said, I think it was Amani. It's also freeing to have a diagnosis and know what's going on and not beat up yourself about what you may or may not have been doing.
Thank you. And as we go through the questions, I'll direct it to one person, but certainly if there's additional remarks that the other panelists make, I'm going to certainly invite them to do so. Anyone want to add anything? Okay. Moving forward, we know that having 2 copies of the APOL1 risk variant significantly increases the risk of rapid kidney decline. What does the current research tell us about why some people with these variants experience aggressive disease while others remain stable? Again, we're going to start with Dr. Moxie Mims.
Okay, so I think that was touched on a little bit earlier in Dr. Lee's video. So, as was pointed out, about 13% of African Americans carry 2 copies of the high-risk variants, but only about a quarter of them are likely to go on to chronic kidney disease and potentially end-stage kidney disease. So what the research has shown us so far, and obviously we're still learning a lot about this, is that for some people, you need that quote-unquote second hit. That just because you have the high-risk variants does not mean that you're absolutely irrevocably going toward kidney failure. And I think that should be reassuring for people. One of the key pieces to look at are what are your symptoms, what are your findings? That's likely to give you clues about what may be coming down the road. So the big piece, proteinuria that you heard folks talking about, APOL1 kidney disease, or AMKD, is a proteinuric disease. So if you get tested and you have 2 risk variants, but you don't have any proteinuria, yes, your doc can monitor you for that, but if you have kidney disease, your eGFR that you heard mentioned earlier is off, and you see that your kidney function is declining, even if you have the variants, if you don't have proteinuria, you have something else going on that's giving you your kidney failure. So I just would like to make that point that you can have 2 high-risk variants and kidney disease, and that kidney disease may not be AMKD. It could be something else if you don't have proteinuria. So we still have a lot to learn about that second hit, some viruses, high blood pressure. There are diseases where it's not been shown to be causative, but can aggravate or cause diseases to progress more rapidly. Things like lupus, like sickle cell disease that's causing kidney disease. So you can see APOL1 high-risk variants exacerbating those diseases, even though they may not be the underlying cause.
Thank you.
A lot to learn.
And I'll add to that just the phenomenon that this is very complex, and we are still learning. And one of the things that many things struck me during the patient panel, which was just absolutely awesome. And I'm kind of glad we didn't have to follow right after them, but then the spoken word came, and I was like, well, I guess like the bar is so far up here. But it's that it is complex, and we are still learning. Our genes don't work in silos. They interact with other, genes and other places. The kidney's a very complex organ. So one of the challenges I think that happens when we do genetic testing, and back to what was said during the panel was, I got this result, and I talked to the genetic counselor, and I just felt like I didn't get any answers. And it may have been that person just didn't have any. We didn't know enough. We're still trying to figure it out. And I think there is this tendency, I think that all just comes as humans, that you kind of want A to cause B, and then B causes C, and it's this very straight line so that you can comprehend and understand it. But genetics, unfortunately, when we get to these complex diseases like kidney disease or cardiac disease, whatever it may be, that it does become more complex. And so you see this, quarter of people with these variants going on to end-stage kidney disease. Well, what is it? There's something about that 25%, which we know partly is due to other comorbidities, other conditions that are going on, but there may be other things, and so we're still learning. And so I think that factors into it.
Thank you. Barbara, I have a question that's totally off the sheet, but you talking made me think of it. You're a genetic counselor. What is that? We talk about the testing, and they say you need to go. Can you just briefly explain that to me and everyone else here, please?
Absolutely. So genetic counselors are master's level health professionals. So For anyone who's out there looking for a career in health, we welcome you. It was about 2 years after undergrad. But we are especially trained in medical genetics, as well as in understanding the human reaction to those results, and how people process that, and how that's processed within families. So genetic counselors are specialists within the healthcare team, so often we get people referred to us. You don't necessarily have your neighborhood genetic counselor like you have your neighborhood PCP. But that PCP can certainly direct you and get you referred, or your nephrologist, or whoever it may be. But we generally operate as part of a healthcare team.
Thank you very much. Now, let's switch topics here and go to overcoming gaps in education, awareness, and genetic testing. So I'm coming to you with this one, Mike. Genetic testing is a powerful tool, but it's still not a standard part of every renal workup. What are the primary barriers keeping providers from ordering genetic tests earlier? And how can organizations like the American Kidney Fund and the APOL1 Action Alliance help lower those hurdles? What can we do?
Thank you. Thank you for the. Am I on? I can project. Thank you for the too much. Thank you for the question, Richard, and thank you very much for being here. I think it starts with what Dr. Moxie Mims said, is that we went through a long period in the kidney disease field where there weren't really any treatments or things that actions that could be taken other than preparing someone for dialysis and getting on the transplant list. But in the last 10 years especially, there are so many opportunities now, and we're starting to see doctors start to catch on in doing that, and caring more about finding out what the cause was. I mean, you saw how powerful finding out what the cause can do from the patient panelist side of things. I think there's also concern, which we have really shown is certainly lessening, but is not gone, in the cost of genetic tests. But in many cases, there are now trials for a lot of these genetic conditions, including AMKD, in which the genetic testing is paid for by the trial companies that are working through this. So that really shouldn't be a barrier anymore either. The new one that I've been hearing, I think, the most are doctors who will run a genetic test, and it's not always an easy answer that comes back on the genetic report. You can sometimes have a variant on your gene, but it's not really known, that particular variant, we're all very different, to cause potentially some kind of a problem or a disease to happen. So those will come back on a report as called a variant of unknown significance, and that really seems to confound a lot of doctors and make them hesitant to even want to report, because like, I don't know what this really means. How do I tell this to my patient? Now, we don't think that's a good enough reason, and they should be leaning on people like Barbara and genetic counselors to really fill that gap. But I think that's a big issue. As far as what we can do, we have to continue to educate providers that we are in a new era of kidney disease, that there are options for people to get treatments and get on therapies and get into trials to help move this field forward and hopefully eventually someday end this epidemic of dialysis that has engulfed the country. So I think educating providers is really important. We have to go to where they are. Many of these nephrologists, especially in small practices in rural areas, I just heard from one that are seeing patients, they're quadruple booking appointments just to try to stay above water because they're overwhelmed. They don't have time to go to conferences and professional medical society conferences and learn about this. So we've got to bring that education to them. And I think the final thing is obviously events like this and educating the public and those that are at risk for AMKD to understand that and really be their own advocates to push to get genetic testing move forward, and whatever we can also do finally just to get more genetic counselors available to eliminate kind of that knowledge gap.
Thanks, Mike. Now let's follow up on that. When a patient tests positive for the APOL1 risk variants, the conversation shifts from individual care to family health. What guidance do you give patients on how to talk to their children and siblings about getting tested. Barbara, could you address that, please?
Yeah, so again, I'll highlight some things that were mentioned in the earlier panel. This idea of attaching your genetic test results to your will is just awesome. And I had never even thought of that, so but I'm going to use that. But I think what that brings up is communication. You know, so much of the wealth that's in this type of information around genetic testing is dependent on people talking. And we know that you know, I can certainly say for many in my community, I think it reaches, though, throughout many communities. People don't talk about health. People don't talk about what's wrong. You know, for many generations, you know, it just was not considered appropriate to talk about your health care or what was going on with you. But that ends up harming that next generation who's left not knowing. And so with legacy being an underlying theme here, I think this is where our power is. Even if you don't know anything about your own family history, that's something that you can change in the future. And so that's the conversation that we often have, or I will often have with patients if they are hesitant to talk, to say this is your way to make a difference. You know, we heard that the stories of the surprise, how people, you know, fell upon these diagnoses, and they said, if I knew then, right, what was going on, I would have been able to do something. And so just taking that phrase and saying, well, make that different for your brother, for your sister, for your children, for your grandchildren, and talk about it. But it requires a few things. It requires for a person to understand what they're even trying to share, right? And so again, a genetic counselor can step in there, help to break things down in a way that people can understand it and then be able to share it. Being patient. We talked about the multiple touch points, and that's true on a level of groups like this trying to educate the community, but it's also true for that individual trying to educate their family members. So first it may be, you know, a conversation, then it may be, you know, a couple months later, emailing that test report, you know, just want to let you know I was going to get this to you. You know, to later asking, okay, did you talk to your doctor about that? And understanding that this type of testing, we also mentioned, you know, earlier, not everybody wants to get this information. They may not always want that genetic test. And it may just not be that genetic test on that day at that time. It just may not be the time for that person. But if it at least gets that relative to mention something to their doctor, just start checking my kidney function. Even if they don't get that APOL1 test, but you know, at least start checking my kidney function. That's a step, and understanding it may take several of those little steps to get to that eventual goal of perhaps getting tested and getting that information. So those are the types of strategies and things that we talk about, kind of that understanding for yourself, having that, being patient, and understanding that those multiple touch points are important.
Thank you. Very enlightening. There are so many new things coming out now, and many of you may hear the term precision medicine, and that's what it is, by being able to take a look at your genetics and determine what is appropriate for you as an individual. So, even when breakthrough treatments are approved, insurance coverage and affordability can create massive barriers. What policy or advocacy steps do kidney organizations, what steps do they need to take to, what steps can they take right now to ensure patients can actually access the APOL1 specific therapies? And we'll start with you on that, Ryan.
Thank you very much, Richard. I think it starts, I wish I could say that you're going to walk into a doctor's office tomorrow and they're going to be aware of every single new therapy that's out there and whether or not you should get it. But unfortunately, that's just not going to be the case. So the first thing we have to do is awareness, and empowerment events like today are very important. The American Kidney Fund is very proud that we started the inaugural AMKD Awareness Day, which happens in April every year. We've had some great success. Amani has been really kind of the star of that, I would say. She's been in People magazine and all kinds of different things, and I think we've been on at least 3 panels together telling her story. So that first piece is just the awareness piece, which is really important. And then I think it starts to get down to, we have to be the reality of this is access to medications from a financial and insurance standpoint. We're already starting to see some of the effects of cuts to some of the public kind of safety nets that are out there, including Medicaid. That's going to get even worse next year. So I think what we all can do, and unfortunately we were not successful, and not just AKF, every single major health organization in the country tried to prevent those Medicaid cuts from happening, but that is a major issue that I think is going to be a danger for folks moving forward. So getting people access from a standpoint of health insurance is really obviously an important part of this as well. And then regardless of this, what we're going to encounter, and what we're already seeing with some of the other innovations that have come to the market in the kidney disease space, is it can be tough to navigate some insurance coverage for medications. There may be what's called step therapy. So try this and fail that first, and then we'll give you this new therapy to move forward. We've got to try to eliminate those kinds of things. And we are actually working, there's another rare disease called IgA nephropathy that we're working with the IgA Nephropathy Foundation on to try to create some education for not only patients to navigate the appeal process and try to get through that as quickly as possible, but also some support for administrative staff in the doctor's office, because sometimes it's the administrative staff, it's the nurse, it's the doctors themselves that are trying to navigate that. So I think we have to make that process easier to try to get access to those medications. But it's awareness, it's education that there's available, it's trying to protect access to those, and then giving people the tools to work around and through the system when necessary.
Thank you, Mike. And again, just to emphasize, many therapies are out there. We can do a better job, but one of the big challenges is let's talk about, of course, we know APOL1 mediated kidney disease disproportionately impacts the Black community, a population that has historically faced deep systematic biases in healthcare. How do we ensure that equity is baked into how we roll out precision medicine so that these advanced treatments actually reach the communities that need them the most? We're going to start with Barbara.
So I think that there's a few different levels where action can be taken. So one is on the scientific level. If we look across the studies and genetic research that has been done, that we base our clinical trials on, that we base our medications on, that we base our availability of what we're able to do genetic testing for, what that's based on. When we look at that, only about 2% of that data is coming from communities that have a significant African ancestry. And so what that means is that, the tests that are rolled out, medications that are based on genetic information are trying to use that, which is essentially precision medicine, is limited. It may only be effective in a certain segment of the population that share that genetic information. And that's actually a harm to everyone, because within the African diaspora is the greatest diversity of genetics. So if you create drugs and so forth that meet the needs of that population, you'll really touch everyone, right, as opposed to just going to a subset. So that's one. And so that comes to people in the scientific community being better about reaching out to those communities and getting them engaged in that research. And part of that then gets us to our next kind of point, which is the importance of engagement, and engagement of communities and patients from the beginning when this research is undertaken, or when someone's trying to put together a clinical trial. Don't come to AAA when you've already laid out your whole plan of how we're going to do this clinical trial, and these are the steps you got to take, and now I want you all to go and recruit for me. Like, no, that's not when you need to bring me in. You need to bring me in the very beginning. And so really properly engaging those communities is important. The other thing is make sure we have proper education. There is a lot of discussion when we talk about who to do APOL1 genetic testing on. We say, people of African descent. But we can't ignore the history in this country and how people define people of African descent, which is largely by race. And race is not a biological construct, it's a social one. In one instance in time, someone may consider someone black, and then the next day in a different community, they may consider them not black, right? Like, that is fluid, and so that's not gonna help define who has what gene. And so even though I understand the attractiveness of using that terminology to determine who gets testing and who doesn't, because on some level you may want to try to focus and target. And to a certain extent there is validity in that you want to target, let's say, that black community, make sure they understand and know that this is something that's out there. But when we start to let that seep into medical policy and medical guidelines, we have to tread very carefully. Not only do you risk missing people who may not look quote unquote black, but may carry those genes, which can happen. You also can risk going down the trail of discrimination, or of basically just supporting and continuing to perpetuate that race equals genetics, and that there's some equality there, which there is not. And so, I do a lot of work in the sickle cell space. They can tell you that that's not a road we want to go down. And so we just need to be careful as we advocate to get this information out there into certain communities, which again, I completely and wholeheartedly support, that we still be careful about what that message actually is.
Thank you. Someone else want to add to that?
I mean, I think that was so well put in terms of getting things out there. One of the other spaces in which I work that links with APOL1 is I'm steering committee chair for the APOLLO study, which is, I think, maybe Richard mentioned it earlier about in terms of transplant. So similarly to what you said, that race does not equal genetics or ancestry or heredity. For the longest time, the mantra was kidneys from African American donors don't last as long as kidneys from other races. Well, now what the APOLLO study that I'm part of is trying to look at is it that it's from an African American donor, or maybe the kidneys that don't last as long come from people who have the high-risk variants, and the kidneys from African Americans who don't have the high-risk variants may last just as long as kidney from anybody else. And so I think it comes back to this looking at it scientifically, looking at the biology and not race and color to answer that question. And, hopefully we'll have that answer pretty soon, but I wholeheartedly agree with what Barbara has said.
That's great. And I'd just like to make one observation here. For all this information we're talking about, we have a challenge of having appropriate diversity in clinical trials. I want to emphasize that the research that's being done in this field is being done for us, not to us. We need your participation, and part of what we're trying to do here is to educate all of us so that we can encourage and support people if they're in a situation where they might be able to participate in a clinical trial. 3 of the leading companies in this country are here with us today, so we want to give them that message. We will get, and I'm certain that Mike can have it over to AKF, and we will get inclusion-exclusion criteria so we can give that information to you should you choose to want to participate and get involved in that. And that's certainly part of what we're trying to do. The other thing that's important, we always hear about standards of care. Sometimes standards of care simply need to change, and that's where that advocacy piece comes in. And I'm going to ask Dr. Moxie Mims to explain to us or address this question. Managing this disease requires a village: nephrologists, genetic counselors, primary care doctors, and patient advocates. How can we break down the silos between these specialties to create a seamless supportive care circle for the patient? Everyone in one place at one time, kind of a multidisciplinary clinic. Dr. Mims, could you please speak to that?
So, yeah, what we have, where I work at Children's, we do have such multidisciplinary clinics. It's not easy, and I know that it's not something that can necessarily be done everywhere. I mean, you mentioned rural practices where people may be by themselves, where that's not feasible. The hope is that if you're referred to a tertiary care center, you can have all these pieces in one place. Like you said, the nephrologist. We have a genetic kidney disease clinic, for example, where it's the nephrologist, the genetic counselor, a psychologist, a nutritionist, because in some cases that's necessary, and then depending on the particular type of genetic kidney disease that we're talking about, we may even need a liver specialist or a cardiologist as well, depending on the picture of what's going on with that patient. So I'm not trying to say that this is a snap your finger and it happens. It takes work. It took a lot for us to be able to get such a multidisciplinary clinic put together at our hospital. You have to make the case to, of course, the hospital administrator, and then the other subspecialties that you want them to give up time in their own clinic to come and join you in our clinic. But I think if you make the case that this is optimal care for the patient, which is what we're all supposed to be about, eventually you can get there.
Thank you. Again, a unique situation, but we have to push. Everybody wants to keep the costs down. We understand that. But sometimes you have to look at that cost as an investment. I always tell people, if it costs $80,000 a year for dialysis, you identify something early and stop that patient from eventually getting on dialysis 5 years. You know, you can do the math. That's a pretty good sum of money, and you multiply that by hundreds of thousands. Not to mention, I just have to say it, the anxiety and stress that can be avoided in all of us. And to think about what we heard from those patients earlier, this disease can attack you when you're very young. And even Sharon had some issues when she was a teenager, didn't know what they were. And the kids have enough issues to deal with nowadays, and for them to have to carry that burden, I'm sorry, I just have to tell these adults to step up. And I guess we're part of that group. So moving on here, Mike, we're officially launching APOL1 Action Alliance today to be a dedicated voice for the community. From your vantage point, as providers and organizational leaders, what is the most critical missing piece that this alliance can help to fulfill to support your work?
Absolutely. Well, I think Tracy from the patient panel said it best, is that she wanted someone to meet her where she was. And I think I really see this, this really being the way to do that, the alliance being the way to do that. You know, the American Kidney Fund, we are a very big organization, and we try to serve every patient that's dealing with kidney disease. But we're also, I think, humble enough to know that we are not going to be able to have that one-on-one kind of a conversation with someone that has any particular rare kidney disease, including AMKD. And until today, officially, there was not a group that could do that. And Richard and Sharon have taken this on, and I'm we were at a conference, Sharon and I were at a conference, I guess it was about 13 months ago, and the idea for starting a nonprofit in this area came up. 13 months later, not only is there a nonprofit, there's an event that she's holding today. So it's quite impressive, and I am quite sure that she's going to be able to build a network that's going to be able to do just that and meeting people kind of where they are. In the meantime, we're working together. We're both part of a coalition that the American Kidney Fund founded. It's called the APOL1 Coalition. It includes the Alliance and a lot of other researchers, patients, other organizations. As part of that, we're building a list of resources from every organization. We're going to list all of them on our site so you can find anyone's information about AMKD. And also today, and in your bag, you have a postcard with a QR code to link to it. We're also starting a large nationwide survey of those living with and affected by AMKD to understand, what their journey looks like, what they'd be looking for trials, for therapies, their experiences. We're going to be sharing that with the Alliance and working together to really create programs and opportunities to help patients that are dealing with this, because we don't want the same experience from the patient panelists earlier to be for the next generation of just confusion and lack of action. We really want to move forward. So I think those are really how I see the coalition, the Alliance moving forward.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that response. Now, as we look at some of the other challenges we face, we certainly have several companies who we know are here with us that are doing research in this space. Well, one observation I want to share with you is that with respect to research, we spend about $400, I think, for kidney patients, as opposed to something like, it's quite a bit more, several thousand for cancer. And mind you now, we never want to build ourselves up by putting something else down, because obviously cancer is a very serious disease. But what we do want to say is that we need the continued emphasis on the development of these drugs and therapeutics and the support that comes from the government. So over at NIH, forgive the acronym, the National Institutes of Health, they have the National Institute for Diabetes, Digestive, and Kidney Disease. They currently have a project going on called the Kidney Precision Medicine Project. And I've had the good fortune of working on that for several years since its inception. And hopefully Glenda Roberts is out there in the virtual world listening to us. And they're doing all things kidney, providing a lot of information that is available to the private sector, seeking to have public-private collaborations. So things are much brighter in the future than they have been in the past. So thinking about that, if we look ahead 5 years, what is the major breakthrough or shift in the APOL1 landscape that you are most optimistic about? And how about if all three of you give us a few words on that? We'll start with Barbara here.
So I will say just the advent of a gene-specific therapeutic is a big step. So, we talked about the approach up to this point of, the one-size-fit-all, try one drug, see if it works, go to the next one. But the beauty of having or knowing that genetic causation is now you can be very specific about the drug that you use. One interesting thing about APOL1, and a very quick genetic lesson. So our genes basically encode proteins, like they tell us how to make a protein. So there's the APOL1 protein that's made. What we found out was that people can live if they never make APOL1. So there are people who have different variants in their APOL1 gene that causes it not to work at all, but they're healthy and fine. And so that's really kind of great news because what that means is if we are able to stop the body from making the variant APOL1 that's, causing this increased risk for kidney disease, that is a potentially a very powerful treatment. I'd stay away from cure. I would say more like transformative type of therapy. And so I'm excited about that. We've, as a medical society, we've gotten, pretty far with gene therapy. To know that that's something that might be down the road, I think is very exciting. So just those gene-based therapy.
I echo that, and it's a little bit less onerous than some other gene therapies for other diseases in terms of how you approach it. When I was speaking with Richard and Sharon the other evening, one of the things I was saying is, yes, we can lament that, wow, it took so long to get to know about this, and we've known for decades upon decades that African Americans have a higher incidence of kidney disease, and they progress to end stage faster. And what took us so long to get here. On the other hand, though, I think looking at from the time that this gene variant was identified to now, we've got these companies doing trials. It's phenomenal. I don't think anyone can say that someone has gotten to the point within a decade of saying, this is the problem on a molecular level, and having targeted therapies in trials. I am just so excited that hopefully within the next 5 years, all 3 of these companies and maybe more will have drugs on the market that we can use, and we may find that, one drug may work differently in one subset. Like we said, we don't know all the nuances from one person with high-risk variants to another. But just the fact that we might have these options that are so targeted, I'm really stoked. So.
Mike?
Well, I certainly echo all of that, and it is amazing that we could soon have 3 therapies on the market for this. I think the one breakthrough is maybe a side effect of this, which is, as Richard said, it's the mantra has been for so long that we can't get adequate representation in clinical trials from minority populations. Well, here are 3 different companies that are really only targeting minority populations and having fantastic success. So I think a lot of researchers are not going to be able to hide behind that anymore, because clearly there is interest in participating in trials, and we need to take the learnings from these 3 companies and really make sure others are following it as well.
Thank you. Now, staying ahead of the therapeutic pipeline and clinical endpoints, a major milestone in kidney research has been the International Parasol APOL1 initiative, which focuses on defining clear disease-specific endpoints like proteinuria reduction for accelerated trial approvals. From a research and regulatory standpoint, why is having an APOL1 specific model for clinical trials such as a massive victory for getting treatments to patients faster? Translation, tell us a little bit about the Parasol APOL1 initiative.
So just to give a little bit of background of how drugs get to market, right? I'm not going to give you a complete tutorial, but I think most of you know that drugs don't get to market unless the FDA approves them. And there's specific standards that FDA requires for a drug to be approved. And so for the longest time, which is one of the other things that stymied us with kidney disease, the outcome that they looked for, they would look for things like, did you end up on dialysis if you got this drug or not? Or did your creatinine double or your GFR half? Well, we know that for most kidney diseases, that takes a long time. This does not happen overnight. And so it made clinical trials for kidney disease incredibly hard. And that's why we had so few drugs being approved in any reasonable amount of time. And who wants to be in a clinical trial for 10, 15 years, right? The people are going to get tired. So one of the things that kidney researchers have been trying to convince the FDA of for an extended period of time is, are there shorter term things we can look at that can equate for down the road not ending up on dialysis or not doubling your creatinine? And one of those things in diseases like AMKD and a lot of other kidney diseases, a lot of them, as we've been talking about, proteinuria is what you see. So the push has been, well, can we just not look at significant decrease in proteinuria as a surrogate endpoint for going on to end-stage kidney disease or some of those long-term things that we look at? And so now we seem to be there. So Parasol, I forget what the acronym stands for, but I like to think of it as, you can think of a parasol as an umbrella, like this big umbrella trial. And so what they're doing is they're going to pool data from all over the world, people who are doing trials, drug companies, individual centers that are doing clinical trials. And that's where the power is in the data, because if you can get data from all these places, it's much better than my one trial that I'm doing. And so now, as an offshoot of Parasol, there was Parasol for FSGS, and now there's Parasol looking at APOL1 in and of itself. So if you can think of people doing research in this sphere across the globe, saying, yes, I'm willing to contribute the data from my trial, and if we pool this, we can actually see what's effective. And so the hope is that once this happens, if we can show that, decreasing proteinuria is truly a marker that people can hang their hat on, I think it's going to make drug approval for this and hopefully other diseases a lot more efficient.
Thank you, thank you. Very, very insightful. I mentioned the Kidney Precision Medicine Project, and you just explained us about the Parasol APOL1 project. CPATH, which is another organization, they have a biomarker data repository project, and we are finally getting many of these projects and efforts to talk to each other. She mentioned marker. There are things when you go to the doctor, biomarker, you get blood work, it'll tell you something like your EGFR or your creatinine. Well, that gives a sign as to how your kidney is doing. And we have research and knowledge of other biomarkers that have to be approved by the FDA. So we're waiting on that, but the point that I want to share is that there's tremendous progress that's being taken place right now. And one of our challenges is to make certain that these things that we're talking about can be covered by insurance companies and become a standard of care. And to have, as one of our patients indicated today, well, do you think we should do a genetic test? No, we don't need that. And there's one person in the room that's familiar with it and didn't get listened to. So we have to do a better job with educating, and that's why I'm so happy that we have the good folks here. I also want to mention, we heard from Dr. Lee earlier, and we also have, I'm talking about our board members, another fellow board member down at Morehouse School of Medicine who's working with us. So we think that there's a lot going on, and I just kind of want to give you an overview of some of the things that we're doing to help facilitate the patches of that knowledge. And being able to work together in a collaborative fashion, I think, is the answer. I'm going to take a look at one more question here, and then we'll open it up for some of your questions and see if we can respond. And provide some information to you. If a community health clinic wants to implement routine screening and saliva-based genetic testing for APOL1 in high prevalence areas, what is the biggest logistical hurdle they face, and how can national kidney organizations help them scale their effort? Mike, why don't you enlighten us about that?
Sure. Well, I don't think I'm going to give you the silver bullet here, but I at least will highlight some of the problems. For one thing, federally qualified health centers and a lot of these community clinics are really struggling from a funding standpoint right now, which is, I'm sure, not a surprise to anybody here. And as I mentioned earlier, with the Medicaid cuts, I'm worried about what that's going to mean. I mean, a lot of the patients that go to those clinics are on Medicaid or have no insurance. So just the logistics of the funding is always going to be a problem. The American Kidney Fund works with another nonprofit called the Maven Project, which has about 700 federally qualified health centers, mostly in like rural or like far suburb areas. And they reach about 5,000 primary care doctors and advanced practitioners that work there. And we've been talking to them about this because we want to try to help in any way we can, but they're seeing a lot of patients that are only coming in for acute issues, right? I have a fever, I twisted my ankle. And even when they're doing kind of that routine care, many of them don't have lab facilities on site, so they have to ship it out to one of the companies like Quest or LabCorp or whatever, and that could be a 48-hour turnaround, and that patient unfortunately may never come back again. So I think one of the benefits of doing something where you do a screening at a clinic like that within the health system is really important to do. But the biggest problem is just getting people to screen for kidney disease to start with. Many, many people will only get one of the two tests for kidney disease. You can't find out what kind of kidney disease you have unless you know you have kidney disease to start with. So for anyone that's going to the doctor, if they're only giving you a blood test for kidney disease, make sure they're doing urine as well, because that's the only way you're going to find early stages of kidney disease is through the urine test. It's actually the more important of the two, to be honest. So we have to help what we can to do there, where we can't try to, I think, supplement with other programs. There's another great organization called GlomCon that has a program called the Embark Awareness Program that's going out and doing screenings in places. There's other organizations that are starting to spin up some of that work, and I think it's going to be important. But the key is to figure out if you have kidney disease to start with and then do these tests, because it really is, it's really not that, from a cost standpoint, to actually do it, it's not that much, but the logistics that go into it in a very busy, under-resourced community health clinic, I think, can be challenging.
Thank you, Mike. We're getting ready to open it up, but I want to give my colleagues a chance. Do you have something else you want to add or share before we take questions from the audience?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Mike was saying about your numbers. We hear all the time, it's all over TV and radio about know your numbers, and they're typically referring to knowing what your blood pressure is and knowing what your cholesterol level is. But I would say to add to that, know what your creatinine is and know what your urine protein excretion is in the umbrella of know your numbers.
I did want to, there was an earlier comment around newborn screening and adding this to newborn screening. So newborn screening is really reserved for conditions where when you do that testing, there's an immediate action that needs to take place, and you're very sure about that outcome. And so I'll just say that APOL1 sits outside of that just a bit, in the sense that even though the issues may occur within the pediatric time frame, it's usually not in the neonatal time frame, not in infancy. A, and B, it's that 25%, right? It's not the 100% that are going to actually end up experiencing problems. So that's likely why it's not going to quite reach the criteria that we usually ask for when we're looking for when we add something to that newborn screening panel. That being said, that's where we are today. I'll just, as an aside, newborn screening is getting to a point where people are starting to do whole genome sequencing at that newborn period to be able to say to parents, okay, know your child doesn't have G6PD that someone mentioned, or doesn't have sickle cell, but they do carry these, APOL1 variants that in the future is associated with kidney disease. So we need to keep an eye on that. So we're getting there, and I have no doubt that once we get there, that this would be included in one of those things that would be shared with parents. But as far as right now today, that's likely why it's not there.
Thanks, guys. We'd like to open it up to questions from the audience.
Hi. During COVID, we all got these free home test kits on Amazon, although I'm not promoting, has a whole stock full of kidney test strip tests. What's the validity of some of those tests that measure multiple kidney functions? For instance, I am on a 6-in-1 at-home kidney test / test and track your kidney function and health for $75. And this kidney health and function test tests 6 key markers: creatinine, EGFR, fasting glucose, your average blood sugar, your HbA1c, inflammation, and visceral fat. Why the last one? But just wondering, I said inflammation, right? You can order it online, collect your sample at home, send the sample back to our third-party nationally accredited lab in your prepaid envelope, and then you can track your progress over time. How valid are these? And do you think that our community could, as a result of more knowledge and information coming to us as patients for APOL1, how can we add in more comprehensive, valid evidence of some of these markers that they say they manage, or that they test, because we know, for instance, several transplant clinics offer screenings for free. You can go to any lab if you have insurance, if you have Medicare, Medicaid, but then if you decide, if after coming, my sons are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy 2 of those, and we're gonna have everybody take this test. What do doctors and researchers do when patients come with this type of information? I know that was a lot of questions at one time, but my head is spinning with some of the things you said in an excited way, but I'm just saying.
So I would say, I don't know how valid they are without knowing the source. So I can't answer the validity part. I think the key to look at for any test, just like drugs have to be approved by FDA, lab tests are also approved by FDA. So you would want to make sure that this is truly a test that's been validated and approved and shown to be accurate. It all sounds good. Those are all very reasonable things for people to have tested, but I can't speak to the validity of what that specific company is offering.
So I'll add a bit to that. I think the other thing to consider, and I'll just take it from the genetics world, because we talked about 23andMe, quite a bit. And so I think it becomes this balance between the benefit of larger access to testing, right, whether it's in the genetic space or in the kidney space, to what is, again, the utility and the usefulness of that information. And I'll even give an example from a kidney perspective. I'm not completely familiar with what 23andMe tests for in the realm of kidney disease. The benefit with APOL1 is it is these 2 variants. It's very, kind of relatively simple. But one thing Mike, threw out there, and we see this with other genes, are these variants of unknown significance, which can happen. So within one gene, you can have thousands of variants, types of that gene. So example I often give is with eye color. You can have blue eyes, green eyes, brown eyes, hazel eyes, right? You have all these different variants, many of which are fine, but some of which can cause a problem. And then you come across a purple eye gene,
You're just like, okay, I've never seen this before. I don't know if this person with purple eyes can see or not, or how that's affecting their vision, right? You're not sure. So that's like your variant of unknown significance. Oftentimes, a lab like a 23andMe will look for the blue, brown, and hazel. If they see purple, they're not going to say anything. If they see even, I got to kind of go off my analogy, but even if they see something they're not sure of, or it's just not on their panel of things to report, they're not going to say anything. And so sometimes that testing can underestimate risk. It can make, you didn't have these 3 things we were looking for, so we're going to tell you your kidney risk is low. But really, there's a 4th thing over here that we just didn't look at because it's just not on our panel, but it's actually really important to kidney health. But as long as they, were correct in what they said about those 3 things, they can get through your FDA. They can say that they tested, what they said they were going to test for. But how that's interpreted is what changes, and that's the benefit of having that clinician involved. And so I would say use that $75 and go see your doctor. Get the test done, right? But it is a balance. I mean, I'm not downing, companies like a 23andMe or like this company who may really altruistically be trying to just, get better access. But we have to be careful. And then you get to, I'll just say in the genetic space, then 23andMe goes bankrupt, and then someone else buys the data, and then that's a whole nother conversation we won't go into here.
Where does all that data go?
Where does all the data go? In the cloud. Right. And why are they offering you that $99 test? Oh, black person whose data we don't have, who we're trying to get.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hey. I had a question, but I first wanted to say, Dr. Moxie Mims, you were my first pediatrician nephrology person, and I just want to say thank you because you drew a picture for me, literally, to explain everything to me, and you answered all of my 11 questions. So I want to say thank you. But my actual question was, since you can't test infants, newborns when they're born, if a child is spilling protein, shouldn't the protocol be test them immediately? Or if an adult is spilling protein, shouldn't the protocol be to test them for APOL1 or no?
Not necessarily, and I'll qualify that. So anybody that's spilling protein, you can, in some instances, it could just be a fluke. If they had a fever, you might have protein in your urine. If you've just run a marathon, you can have protein in your urine, things like that. Kids of a certain age, as they're going through growth spurts, can spill protein, something that we call orthostatic or postural proteinuria. But you don't want to make a decision on a single test. So the thing to do, if you have proteinuria, is to recheck it at a time when you've controlled for all those things. You haven't just run a marathon, you don't have a fever. Ideally, you want to do it as a first thing in the morning test, the first morning void. That's going to be the most accurate one. So what you want to see is this something that's persistent? Now, of course, someone who's spilling protein but's also swollen and has all these other things, you don't need to go through all that. But I'm talking about when it's just an isolated situation of the urine test was done and there was protein, you want to find out, was that real or was that just the particular circumstance on that day at that time?
So in conclusion, parents should hold the pediatricians accountable to recheck and then make a decision. And we should all walk away with just knowing that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
what I needed. Thank you.
Because if it's what we call fixed, meaning it's there regardless of all those other circumstances, then you need to dig deeper.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one more question
Right here.
and wrap it up. Go ahead.
This is my granddaughter. I go to the doctors in 2 weeks. I say diabetes doctor, it's criminal, whatever. There you go. And I want to ask, I always ask how my kidneys are doing. She give me a number. I don't really know. You know, she said, it's okay. But I really want to go into, I'm 72, I really want to go into, is my kidney okay? You know, I know what she's going through. I'm going through a whole lot. I'm a diabetic, high blood pressure, everything from A to Z, whatever. And I want her to tell me something more than what she's telling me with this blood test and urine tests I'm having, you know, a lot of stuff. I don't want to go into it, but I want to know how my kidney is doing. So, what question should I ask her?
You want to ask for those numbers.
Those numbers,
What
yeah.
What is my creatinine? Mm-hmm. What is my EGFR? Mm-hmm. Knowing that you said you're 72?
Yeah, I'm 72.
So your EGFR is not going to be the same as the EGFR for a 20-year-old, mm-hmm. but there are normal ranges that vary with age. So you want to know that, and how much protein? Is there protein in my urine or not? If there is, how much? So if those are the specifics that you want rather than they're okay, mm-hmm. you can ask for those actual absolute numbers.
Okay. Thank you. That calms me down a whole lot. Thank you.
Okay, folks, let's thank our guests here. They've done a great job, a lot of information, and thank you. We really appreciate that. And of course, we'll let you leave today, but you're not going anywhere. We'll certainly be in touch with you and follow up. But we're going to have one final session. Sharon's going to join me up on stage, and we're going to kind of wrap things up. And we really appreciate you joining us and spending the afternoon with us. Thanks, guys. Oh, Denise. Is that on the mic? Well, it looked like I'm 90. Yeah, get one of the hot mics. I think this one works.
Right. It's been a great, great day. My heart is full. My heart is full. I know this is just the beginning. This is just the foundation for us. But I'm just so grateful for your time sacrifice on a Saturday to learn about APOL1 and to celebrate this monumental occasion with us. And so we're going to wrap it up just a little bit, just sharing some of the things that we are planning to do in the future. And then we hope that everyone that's still here, I know some people had to leave, can stick around for a group photo. So if you could just give us about 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. I don't know, Mr. Knight likes to talk, but maybe 5 minutes. I'm just joking. Maybe 5 minutes to just wrap it up, and we just want to share some things. And we hope that you're walking away with information today. We hope that you're walking away with tangible things that you can do to support your family as it relates to your kidney health. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Sharon. We need your help. Absolutely. I'm shameless. I'm going to ask for help. There were some cards on the table. If you didn't fill it out, take it with you. We want your ideas. We have the survey. Those of you out there in virtual land, we want you to join in. We want your suggestion. Some of the things that we're working on, we have a Know Your Risk campaign. We're engaging HBCUs. We're going out working and talking with barbershops. And last but not least, we're engaging the church community. So, if you are involved in any one of those, give us a reference. A warm call is always much better than a cold call. And as we start out, we may not get to everybody at once, but hopefully we can just make that a regular part of the community. Many times we're very hesitant to reach out and engage. And I know a lot of times I'm in a room with some very bright people, and I got Google, so I'll sneak and look something up. But there are doctors like the folks that were up here on stage, Dr. Moxie Mim. Mike is involved in a lot of things. Barbara Harrison over at Howard University. So we truly want this to be a learning community, and we're not isolated at all. So again, we have started this project out. We're going to continue on. This is a major milestone. I want you to give Sharon a hand. She was sending out things 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. I said, child, why don't you get some sleep? So she's really worked hard to pull this together, and I think that we make a good team. She's very mature, and I'm old. So, but we're really trying to get some things done, and because of the relationships that we've been able to build, I think that we've been able to make the effort go a little bit faster, and we're going to continue to build on those relationships. So, again, anything else you want to add? This is a movement. We're not starting. We're in motion.
Yes, yes. So Patient Network, I'm passionate about, so I always joke with Mr. Knight because he's strategy, business, and I'm like, I just want to be in the community. Like, that's where I want to be among the people. And so we want to build patient networks, many of whom you see sitting here today that are already in the community and really working together to establish patient networks so that families have a place to land, as I mentioned earlier, that they have a place to go for information, that we're staying close to organizations that are represented here so that we can continue to build the momentum. And so that's a huge part of what we'll be doing is galvanizing families, because as you see, sometimes the patient is ahead of the doctor. So we can't sit back and just say, well, we'll wait till the medical community catches up. Like, we have to be a part of our own rescue and working in collaboration with our healthcare teams. And so if that means you're coming to your doctor with the information first, that's okay. I went to my doctor first and said, hey, where can I get genetically tested? And he couldn't tell me, and that was okay. But now they're offering genetic testing in their practice. And so I was very happy to hear that. So it starts with little seeds like that, and that's what we want to do to establish community. It's going to take all of us to really get the word out there, and so we want to start hands-on together with the patients and the networks that are already in existence. I do want to thank Mr. Knight. When I contacted Mr. Knight about this, and I was really torn, and I was like, I really got to pray about this, Mr. Knight. I don't know. And he's like, Sharon, yes, why not you? You know, and I was like, I'm torn. I don't know if I have the capacity for this. And I'm just getting my own knowledge of APOL1. And so I just want to thank you. And he mentioned to me the word legacy, and that really stuck with me. And he said, Sharon, you know, I've done a lot of things in kidney. I've done it all. I've written papers. I've been a part of this. I've been a part of that. But I look at this as my opportunity to pour back into you and to leave a legacy in the kidney world. And so, Mr. Knight, thank you so much. He could have easily just said, you know what, I've been president of AAKP, I've been this, I've been that. It's my time to just relax. But he decided to come on this journey with us, and I'm just forever grateful. I always call him my kidney dad because he reminds me of my biological dad. He's always been the one pushing, like, okay, you got to do this, and you got to get yourself out there. And so I'm just forever grateful for you coming alongside, bringing your business expertise, strategy that you've learned over the years, professor at Bowie and all of that, for coming along on this ride and leaving your legacy. So thank you.
Appreciate it, Sharon. I think my son and my daughter were here. They've absconded. My son has a 3.5-month-old with him, so I think they kind of had to make a move. But I always tell people, those two were my why. When I went on dialysis, she was 6 and he was 14. She was doing gymnastics on a competitive basis, and he was playing competitive soccer. And one of the things I've always wanted to do was to be able to be involved in what they were doing. Now, I didn't know nothing about gymnastics, but soccer, I get out there and coach that. And the one thing I strongly believe, and I know Sharon does, I just listened to her talking about her daughter, if her daughter's still here, being able to support your kids. And this is what this is what kidney disease does. It takes away your ability to do that. So we are proud to be able to do something about that, so as we go forward, people will be in better shape and won't even have to know what we've gone through and what many of you know. So
you say the final word, Sharon. We're going to wrap it up. Thank
Sure.
you,
I just want to say thank you. My parents are both here. If you all could stand, I just want to recognize you and just thank you. I'm so blessed to have been raised by Barbara and Jimmy Simpson. I really am. Just phenomenal people. I'm not going to get emotional. I've done well today. Just phenomenal individuals that have poured so much into my siblings and I. And I know they're a huge part of why I sit here today. My family is here in droves. We travel in droves if you haven't noticed, but they have been a huge part of our support system and navigating through that. It was new for all of us. And so I just want to thank you to our family. They're always going with me to Kindness for Kidneys events, and what do you need us to do? What do you need us to do? And so thank you. Our volunteers that are here, some of my closest friends stepped up and said, whatever you need, Sharon, we're here for you. We're here to support you. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. I hate getting into thank yous, but I have to thank people. Briar Patch Media, Jonathan, oh my goodness. Jonathan, he's serious business, and so he kept us going, asking the right questions, all of that. Our panelists, our patient panel, if everyone could please give them a hand. Imani, Tracy, Patrice, oh my goodness, just powerful, powerful individuals. And again, Quentin, our prayers are with you. I hope you're watching, but just know that we really missed you, and our prayers are with you. Our expert panel, Mike, Barbara, Dr. Moxie Mims, thank you so much. I just really respect and admire all of you, and just grateful for your yes and all that you've done to lay the groundwork for where we are today. Thank you so, so much. I recognize my sister, my kidney donor, but I always want to recognize her when I can because, again, she gave me the second win to be able to do the work. And so thank you to our spoken word artists. Just thank you so much, Veronica, Taylor. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know Dr. Lee isn't here, but hopefully she's listening. Dr. Lee, thank you for agreeing to provide some context, because I said many people are going to be coming and they don't know what APOL1 is. So we have to educate and lay some groundwork so that they can continue to engage with us throughout the event. My husband had to leave. He's DJing another event, but my husband and my daughter, Kyla, oh my goodness, they've walked this journey. Kyla was 5 months when I was diagnosed, so she's seen all different phases, from the dialysis phase to now the transplant. Sean taking us to appointments and just really have been there and hung in there, and I don't take that for granted. I know that's not everyone's story, and so I just want to thank you all. Kyla, Sean, thank you so much for just never giving up on me. I'm very driven, so they're like, look, you're doing too much. You need to calm down. And so I just appreciate them just being there as a constant reminder for me to really take in what's going on around me and to celebrate them. And so again, Mr. Knight, thank you. I want to make sure I'm not leaving out anyone before I recognize our sponsors, but those that took advantage of the Kidney Corner, things like that. There are table talk discussions there, so if you had any type of conversation with anyone at your table, we'd love for you to jot down some things for us to take with us. And then there's also a survey card for you to scan the QR code. We want feedback. This is our first event, and it's the first of many, and we want to make sure that we are sensitive to the needs of the people that we're going to be serving. Our sponsors, I have to recognize Courtney Keplinger. We've been having conversations about APOL1 for the last 2 or 3 years, I feel, since I met Courtney. And she's really been I call her the master connector. She is the master connector. She knows everyone, and she knows how to strategically partner you with the right people. And so, Courtney, I just want to thank you. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for just being a listening ear. Outside of, I know, separately, of course, but just being a listening ear and encouraging me. On days where I was just like, yeah, no, I can't do this. Courtney's like, Sharon, you can do this. And I support you. And so just thank you for that. My Vertex family, thank you for being sponsors. Heather, Lindsay, Emily, Olivia, thank you so much. I feel like I'm missing someone, but please charge it to my head and not my heart. Just thank you so much. Trevere family, I don't know if Sheikah had to leave, but thank you for that. One thing that you'll find about me, I'm not privy to just one group. I want to be among everyone. I want to, to me, this is going to take a village, and so we all have to work together to do it. It's no, well, you're doing this, I'm doing that. What can we do together? And then last but not least, my Mays family, thank you so much. I really appreciate all that you've done. I serve on the Patient Advisory Council for Mays, and so their CEO was kind enough to come today from California. He's been traveling, so just thank you so much for coming out. And I hope I'm not leaving out anyone. My volunteers, the friends, just thank you so much. Mr. Knight, am I leaving anyone out?
No, I think you hit them all. I think you hit them all. But we got to give that special thanks to the sponsors, because without them we would not be able to do this. And they're here. They showed up, and we're just so appreciative of that. Everybody here, give them a hand, because again, as I said earlier, this is research that's being done for us. I can't emphasize that enough, and that's critical. So.
Thank you so much, everyone. Virtual folks, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate you. And everyone, go and have a great day. And remember legacy and everything that you do and everything that you say and every decision that we're making. Just think of the legacy that we're leaving. So have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. Oh, group photo. So everyone, if you can come up, we're going to do a group photo. Thank you for the reminder.
Of who? That's the village.
I don't know if we want to come up on stage. Where's the photographer? Do you want us on stage or? Okay.